telling them, Bob, we're going through the same thing. And Jeff mentioned Mike Anquilleri is as well. We'll all try to get our kids their license.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at their mercy, taking the dates I can get.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, we are streaming live. Rosa, you could go ahead and hit record to the cloud now.
Okay.
And I confirm on my other machine that we have audio on YouTube as well.
Okie doke.
All right, we are live and recording. I am going to mute myself and turn off my camera, but if anybody needs anything, just give me. I'll have my headphones on.
Action, roll them.
It's 5:59 p.m. We have one more minute.
Rosa, I'm not sure if the mayor's joining us. I know her secretary called today. I think what happened was she didn't accept the invitation, so she couldn't sign on. But so I'm not sure if she'll be on at some point.
Okay. It is now 6 p.m. and I would like to call the meeting to order. If we can all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I'd like to take a roll call. In alphabetical order, I hope. Patrick Eagleham. Is Patrick Eagleham on? Bob Guthrie?
Present.
Ann Heffernan? Pat Libro? Please remember to unmute. Pat Libro on? Okay.
I'm here.
James Morrissey?
Here.
Rosie Russo? I know Rosie's on.
Here.
Andrea Talamelli?
Here.
And Kebby is on vacation. Neil? Ian?
Here.
Matt?
Here.
Is there anybody else present in the meeting?
Rose, I think the easiest way to do the rest of the people, I'll try to introduce them as I think I've got them all written down so we won't forget anybody.
Okay.
I'll introduce them as we go along.
All right, as long as Tammy,
tonight.
yeah, as long as Tammy's able to take care of that. As we begin the meeting, I'd just like to take a moment to remind everyone to please keep your devices on mute and just remember to turn mute off when you're recognized to speak. And let me extend a warm welcome to our long overdue communications director, Migalina. Is that how you say it?
Yes, or you can say Lena.
Okay, Lena, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
And also present tonight, Marissa, our new COVID liaison.
Hi, thank you so much.
Okay, so we are now entering the public portion of the meeting, and I do have some correspondence to be read into the minutes. First, it's from Sandra Miller. Hello, like many others, concerned with the plans for the reopening of schools for fall. While I truly believe in school learning is best for children, I feel there are still many unanswered questions and concerns that need considerable thought for the well-being of our children, as well as our teachers and staff. I come to you as a parent and healthcare worker who have been working through COVID since its arrival to Connecticut. There are so many questions that still surround the virus, and it seems we learn new components of it every day. While Connecticut has been doing well recently as a state who took precautions, we cannot dismiss the fact that the return of travel and large gatherings will in fact most likely change this. Connecticut has yet to reopen phase 3 due to the ramifications it has had on other states who have gone ahead with premature reopening. Those states are seeing considerably high numbers of cases due to their premature reopen. My concerns are even with the best laid out plans of masking, social distancing while in school, etc. What is the plan to enforce these rules? One example, while our schools do an absolutely amazing job on so many levels, can we really enforce a mask policy when on most days the dress code policy isn't enforced? When the schools are incredibly hot, especially the first few weeks, do we really think the masks will stay on? Children with sensory issues are going to find masks difficult even without the heat factor. With the size of our schools and numbers of students, how can we successfully keep them all separated? What happens when a child tests positive? Does the teacher then have to quarantine as well as the rest of the students in the class? If a class has, say, 20 students and the teacher is possibly repeatedly exposed and needs to quarantine multiple times, is there a plan for them to not be using all their personal time for such? And will subs be easily obtainable to cover a class with potential exposure to that sub as well? I could go on and on with concerns, but the bottom line is, as a parent and healthcare worker, my opinion is we need more time. If colleges are now, for the most part, going online for the fall, as well as how it is okay for our younger children and teachers to be subjected to this potential danger. I'm sure a pandemic isn't any of us thought we would go through in our lifetime, but the fact is it happened, and it's all uncharted territory for all of us. Vaccines are currently in the works, and given more time, we can also see where this virus is going and the potential for reinfection. As we currently know, the potential for reinfection has not been ruled out. I leave you with this. If you all as a smaller group need to hold your meetings via Zoom because it's not safe to meet in person, can you in good faith put these children and teachers back in classrooms every day, all day, and risk their well-being? As administrators and BOE members, you have all vowed to always do what's best for our children. I ask that you put considerable thought and consideration into this for our children, teachers, and school staff. If easier, imagine yourself in a classroom as a teacher or student for 6+ hours a day, wearing a mask and not knowing if anyone around you is a danger to you or your family. Thank you, Sandy Miller. Sandy, thank you for your letter. The Board of Education, as well as our administration, will keep it under advisement. The next letter is from Mr. and Mrs. Piazzik. Mr. Cavallero, in response to the recent survey sent to parents regarding the reopening of schools in the fall, I would like to pose the following to you for review at the next Board of Education meeting. The state mandated that masks will be mandatory from the time they get on the bus until the time they return home. How are you planning on getting 4- and 5-year-olds to keep a mask on for the entire school day? Not to mention, they will be constantly playing with or touching them, which is counterproductive to wearing the masks. Number 2, temperature checks are not required. Why? Why must my husband and I get our temperature checked before entering our place of work, but your teachers and administrators are not? Your teachers will be in the room with our children all day. If these children are not able to keep their masks on due to age, physical condition, or otherwise, wouldn't it make more sense to take this extra precaution? I work in a hospital around vulnerable people, children included. I am required to be temperature checked. I think this should be a requirement for your staff. Number 3, Your reopening committee does not have any teachers there as a teacher, only as union representatives. I've gone over the list and find it humorous that the cafeteria and environmental staff are represented, but teachers who we entrust our children with for 180 days a year aren't there. There should be a teacher from each tier, elementary, middle, high school, to represent each level. I believe this is a huge oversight that should be addressed prior to the next committee meeting. Number 4, masks in the classroom. Will clear masks be provided for your staff? My son has a hearing loss for which he wears a hearing aid and also has apraxia of speech. How is he supposed to understand and communicate with his teachers if their mouths are covered by a mask? He receives, among other services, speech therapy and works with a teacher on the deaf. How will he learn by prompting or proper mouth configuration or tongue placement if their mouths are covered, or when he tries to read lips? It would also be beneficial for younger students or students with other conditions who might need a kind, caring, friendly face that is not blocked by a mask. I understand that the state has set these precedents for schools reopening. I just hope that you and the board will take these into consideration before putting out the final plans for the fall. I know you have to do what is best for everyone, but it's not a one-size-fits-all situation. There are many that have special circumstances and they need to be addressed before we can allow our children to re-enter the schools. We can't do this haphazardly at the risk of our young ones just to make our governor happy. Thank you for your time and consideration. Please feel free to contact us if you have any questions or wish to discuss anything I mentioned further. Michelle and Ed Piasek. Thank you. I have, in addition to that, one more question from Michelle and Ed Piasek. The reopening committee has shared what the plan would be for a full day return, but I've yet to see anything for hybrid or distance learning. Will these options be part of the plan? Other cities have come out with the hybrid plans that, in my opinion, are well thought out and make the most sense for getting our children back into school. The fact that this BOE meeting is being held virtually to determine whether our children should return to school full time should say something about where we are in dealing with this pandemic. Why is it okay for these meetings, which would likely have less attendees than a school bus ride or a classroom, to be virtual, but our children need to be put in a classroom full time? I have another from Stanley Heller. My name is Stanley Heller. I've lived in West Haven since the 70s and taught in West Haven for 40 years. I want to thank the superintendent for his statement about killing of George Floyd. Indeed, Floyd died needlessly. The Board of Education does have a duty to take a stand against police brutality and the centuries-old racism produced by the privileges of white supremacy. In that vein, I would ask the board to make a statement about the needless killing of Mubarak Soleiman on January 15th on the streets of West Haven. He was in a car with the windows up, surrounded completely by police cars. There was no reason for the state trooper to kill him. On June 15, the governor ordered new regulations for state troopers for use of deadly force. I suggest the Board of Education advocate that those regulations be adopted by the West Haven Police. I'm sure you've heard that one demand of the Black Lives Matter movement is the removal of police from schools. I agree. The presence of police in schools has escalated dramatically in the last several decades, and the figures on arrests and referrals to law enforcement show disproportionate numbers for Black and Latino students. Police in schools adds a tone to where students feel they are seen as potential criminals. West Haven schools are not under threat of violent crime by outsiders, so there's no reason to station police in the buildings themselves. In emergencies, police can be called and arrive in a few minutes. Whatever guidance and teaching police do in the schools should be done by teachers, guidance personnel, etc. It might be useful to have a Zoom meeting open to the West Haven community, including all BOE staff, to discuss this matter. Excuse me. In terms of racial matters, West Haven long had a problem with staff diversity. In particular, the number of Black teachers and administrators was tiny, way lower than Black representation in the student body. Something is wrong because New Haven, which I believe pays less than our city, doesn't seem to have a background of all the staff and school employees and make that information public. Then ask the teacher union, other school unions, the West Haven Black Coalition, and local Turkish and Latin groups for suggestions on recruitment. We are realizing that white supremacy is endemic in the country. As you know, Columbus's cruelty is being exposed and his statues are being removed. What about Columbus in the classroom? How is he being portrayed? How about Jefferson, who was anti-slavery until he found out how much money his own slaves were making for him? I suggest teachers be hired to look over West Haven social studies curriculum and text over the next month to make recommendations. Obviously, it would be prohibitively expensive to replace textbooks, but certainly teachers can develop supplemental material for use in their classrooms. Finally, you obviously have an immense problem in assuring the safety of all students and staff as schools reopen. Students in classes are going to have to be kept at least 6 feet apart, and that's going to be impossible if there are large class sizes. I would suggest the hiring of more teachers to significantly cut down on class size and the renting of empty stores and office space in West Haven to use as temporary classrooms. I would suggest you call on the state of Connecticut for an emergency pandemic appropriation to deal with the costs. Even the separation ideas above may not be enough. I urge you to read the New York Times piece by a teacher entitled, "Please Don't Make Me Risk Getting COVID to Teach Your Child." Thank you for your letter, Mr. Help me out here, guys.
Heller.
Heller. Thank you, Mr. Heller. I'm so sorry. Excuse me. Can you get the dog out, please?
Come on.
This is from Vanessa Mondal. Hello, I had more of a question rather than a comment. I just want to be sure someone addresses how speech therapy, physical therapy, and occupational therapy would work. Speech is typically done in a group in Mr. Julia's small office. Also, physical and occupational therapy can involve hand-over-hand contact. How will this be handled to ensure both the therapists and students are safe? I appreciate the opportunity to have your comments heard. Thank you, Vanessa Mondal. I believe that is all for public comments.
Hey, Rosa, I would
Yes,
like to speak in public portion.
absolutely.
I didn't want to hand it in. I figured I'd give you a break.
Okay.
Okay. I'd like to begin by recognizing the amount of work Superintendent Cavallaro and the administrators have done since school got out in June. Quite truthfully, it has been ongoing planning and replanning since March 15th. Since COVID-19 has entered our lives, it has become a monumental task, providing the best educational opportunities for our students. I think it is safe to say that the people attending this meeting tonight all believe that children belong in the physical building of school. We agree that children need the socialization, a real life teacher to provide instruction, and most of all, the security and predictability that school provides. For many of our kids, it is their safe haven. There's no debate in these facts. Presently in Connecticut, the governor has mandated that schools open 5 days a week at full capacities. Parents may choose to opt out from remote model of learning. Last Thursday, Governor Lamont held a press conference with Dr., I'm going to say his name wrong, Gottlieb. Dr. Gottlieb warned that Connecticut is likely to see another major surge of the coronavirus this fall because it is raging throughout much of the country. He continued to say, and I quote, "This is a virus that wants to infect 50 to 60% of the population. And as you get into flu season, this is going to spread more widely." He also said that he sees schools opening and then having to close maybe as early as a month into the new school year. Also note that Governor Lamont has indefinitely suspended phase 3 reopenings of bars in full indoor seating at restaurants. I have a big problem with these issues. If it's not safe to open bars and restaurants to full capacity, How is it safe to open schools to full capacity? Our schools have high enrollments. The high school has around 1,400, I could be wrong, plus staff, Bailey about 1,000 plus staff, and Carrigan about the same. Elementary schools, especially Washington, Seven Rock, and Forest, have pretty good numbers also. How is this safe? If Dr. Gottlieb is saying the virus will be back and stronger, how is it safe to open schools? I worry that we have spent so much time and money to try the 5-day everyone back model, when in fact we should be planning for a more effective distance learning model. I think we need to spend much more time in developing a well thought out plan for virtual learning, which involves being sure that all our learners have what they need as far as devices. And for the younger kids, they also are supplied with manipulatives that they can use at home to follow along with virtual lessons. I look forward to hearing from the administrators tonight. I am especially interested in learning how we will keep everybody safe. I do have many questions, which I will ask as we go along, but I want to be on the record saying that I do not agree with the governor's plan. I believe that it's very unsafe for both staff and students. My opinion is based on what science is telling us right now. I feel that the only thing we can count on is that the virus and our plans will continue to change. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosie. Are there any other comments? Would anybody else like to speak? Would anyone else like to speak? For the third and final time, would anyone else like to speak? Hearing none, we'll move forward to reports. Neil?
Okay, thank you, Rosa. Also, just note that Patrick Eagleham has just signed in.
Okay, thank you.
So I know that there's a lot of questions, especially from the parents of special ed kids. And I do want to say that we are working very closely with Dr. Williams, who is our medical advisor. She's talked to us about masks and social distancing to the best of our ability and the other things that were mentioned. She will be coming out with some kind of written recommendations for us shortly. We will social distance to the best of our ability, for example. However, at the end of the day, it's been made clear, and it was made clear from the governor, who has the power to open and close the schools, that the expectation is that schools will open for 180 days. So we have to plan for that. I believe after you hear some of what we have tonight, you're going to say, you guys did a pretty good job. I'm sure we haven't thought of everything yet. Although I can tell you, I've never seen a summer where our administrators have worked as hard as they have to try to prepare for this year. And don't let anybody fool you. Nobody has all the answers yet. I also understand the criticism that we're meeting through a Zoom meeting. Rosa, I know you looked into that. It was my preference to have a meeting tonight. However, right now, the mayor has deemed that no public meetings can occur in this city. That's how we got to a Zoom meeting tonight. Again, our entire administrative team was prepared to show up at West Haven High School tonight and give you a presentation and show you how hard we've been working. So we're going to give you a flavor of that tonight. I understand there's a lot of questions. Again, special education, as I mentioned, I met with Joe Lucibella today. He and his team are in the process of literally going one by one through each child with an IEP, especially those in learning labs, to see what their needs would be so that we can educate them. Our goal certainly is to bring as many of them as we can back to school. It may not be possible. Matt's going to talk to you a little bit about the kinds of supplies we ordered. We have ordered the shields, and so that and visors and dividers, so that things can be the speech lessons and those kinds of things, social work, one-on-one things can occur. We have talked about a hybrid model, which we'll talk a little bit tonight. But again, right now, our goal, our mission is to open the schools for 180 days. However, we also have to submit a hybrid model, and we have to have a model for distance learning. If you'd like, let me start with distance learning. We will be in a much better position for distance learning. Our goal is to get a device in every student's hand. One of the things I think you all have to keep in mind that we went out in March last year where kids were familiar with their teachers and communication was a little bit easier. One of my concerns is if we start on a complete distance learning model, I'm not so sure students, especially in our primary grades, are going to be able to handle that, to work with someone unknown. I mean, last year when we went out, keep in mind, again, teachers were familiar with their students, with their needs, caseloads were developed so that, people knew when to expect particular services. So I'm hopeful that we're gonna go back to school at least on a hybrid model, if not, on a full schedule. We're prepared to modify some of our schedules. We're also, working on different models. I don't think anything is definite yet. Like, for example, today I heard, while we're prepared to move some of our cafeterias into gymnasium, if furniture is a problem, we'll feed the kids inside the classroom. I mean, there are going to be adjustments, and anybody who's sitting here telling you they have all the answers, they don't. Even if all of you have read the governor's plan to reopen the schools and some of the things that have been sent out from CABES or CAPS or any of the organizations, one of the things they're saying is look for further guidance to come. That means they're still working on the answers. So nobody has all of the answers yet. I think you've got to keep that in mind. However, also, I think us, our administrators, our teachers who've been active and who've been in the building. Our administrators have been engaging with them, have been offering suggestions. We want to open up. We want to open in a safe manner, and we're going to do it under the guidelines that we are supposed to do it. Having said that, before I introduce the people that I have on tonight, I want to make a few more observations, and I'll get them to you. Anything I speak to tonight, I'll try to get them to the board tomorrow. Our hybrid model, which we discussed today, is going to be a 5-day cycle. It won't be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It'll be a 5-day cycle simply because the days aren't all even, where every other grade will go every day. So for example, pre-K 1 and 3 in the elementary schools will be on A day and B day. Kindergartens grade 2 and 4 will be on D and E day. C day will be a distance learning day and buildings could be cleaned. So we'll have kids in for 2-day sessions, and then we will clean the buildings thoroughly. We can also clean the buildings when classrooms aren't in use on the opposite days when the kids aren't in. And then the next 2 days we'll prepare for the second group of students to come in. That works all the way up until high school. I know Dana is still preparing a schedule. Unfortunately, with teachers' schedules, it's not as easy to just say freshman and junior on Monday, sophomores and seniors on Thursday. So she's currently working on that schedule. I can tell you, and I'm going to introduce Marissa in a minute, Marissa Akampora, our COVID compliance person. I should give her a Fitbit because I know she's she's walked the schools a bunch of time. I'm curious to see how far she's gone, but she has walked the buildings many times with our administrators. She is a speech pathologist by trade and works at Pagels, which is a school with our probably highest need learning lab population. So she's certainly familiar with the needs and the challenges of special ed students. So anybody who thinks that we're not continually thinking, continually putting a plan in place and continually improving whatever plan we have. And I'm sure it's going to change right up until the day we open the door. Don't kid yourself. And we'll also we will also look for direction from Governor Lamont, who's said on record, he's not really making a final decision as to whether we open the schools until mid-August. So stay tuned. A lot of things are going to change between now and then. So I mentioned our hybrid model. One thing that I want to mention to the board today, and I talked to Rosa and said that I'd be bringing this up tonight. As you know, every year the board votes on a approved school calendar. Last week, the State Board of Education passed a resolution which allowed the towns, local school districts, to reduce the minimum number of days by 3. I think that's, I want to take advantage of that. The days have to be used for certain purposes, for professional development, to teach teachers in terms of protocols, to do staff development on emotional training for kids and staff members. So I would like to take advantage of that. My plan right now is to move the first day of school till the day after Labor Day. Again, I'll send this to you tomorrow. So, and if I were tech savvy, I'd be able to put it up on the screen, but I'm not. We're going to start the first day of school after Labor Day, which is late this year anyway. So our first day of school, I'm going to propose to the board next month, will be September 8th. I'm in the process of meeting with our administrators. We are meeting tomorrow, in fact, to determine what the 3 extra days will look like. And we're basically backing everything up a week. And instead of getting out June 13th, the new proposed date would be June 15th. Once I meet with our administrators, because every school, every level's a little bit different. I know Rich has some ideas. I know Dana has some ideas about how to bring kids in. Rich may do more of an orientation. Rob may do the same kinds of things. Maybe at the elementary schools, it's small groups. But we are going to meet tomorrow. I have a group of administrators and Ann and some of the coordinators to come and actually meet and talk about what professional development would look like. I believe that'll be a positive. It also gets us out to that first week in September. Maybe the weather will be a little bit cooler. Certainly we can't predict that, but you know, we've had trouble the last few years at the beginning of the day. So that's something to look forward to. Lena is online tonight. She will come on board full-time starting tomorrow. At her interview, one of the things we said was, look, the reason the urgency to fill this job is we need to convince our population, our teachers, our parents, our students that it's safe to return to school. She's got some really good ideas. For example, we're going to have principals make videos of how the schools have changed. You know, we think that we can show some kids wearing masks. Look, the reality of it is that if you want to be safe, you've got to wear masks. And don't worry, we'll have plenty of masks to hand out if need be. You know, again, unfortunately, I get some of the concerns. And there may be some new guidance that the state's going to issue on masks. Bottom line is that if you're going to get on a bus, if you're going to walk into a crowded building, at least until you're in a seat, you're going to have to wear the mask. And I think we can give kids more credit, by the way, than what we give kids credit for. I get that that's an issue, but it's something, it's going to become a way of life. It's going to become a habit, just like a lot of things. And we'll figure that out. We'll figure it out the best we can. You can't yell at me and tell me kids aren't going to wear masks. They've got to wear masks if we want to keep them safe. And we'll do our best to teach them, to show them, and to explain to them why it's important. Teachers are great at that, and they'll get that done. Before I go on, I don't know if, Lena, you want to just address the board and tell them some of your ideas. And again, I know the board is really excited about having you in place, especially this summer. So
Thank you.
maybe
Well, sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Before I kind of get started on some of those ideas, I'd like to just give a formal introduction. First and foremost, I want to say thank you for welcoming me on. I'm currently completing my capstone in public relations and crisis management. So I have worked on several communication functions such as global strategy and a lot of social media measurement and evaluation. Before accepting this position, I taught special ed for 2 years here in Connecticut, specializing as a hands-on trainer. So Neil, as you were saying, Marissa has some of that experience as well as special ed. And I think it's important to keep an open mind and know that we are working to understand all of our different populations. I'm also completing my last year in the military, in which I served as a chemical specialist for almost 8 years and handled a lot of our Homeland Security missions. So crisis is something that I do enjoy, and this is actually the perfect time to come on board and bring all that experience together. A lot of the things that we've been talking about are mock videos. In order for parents to really be able to visualize what the return will be, we need to be able to show them. And that's showing all of the protocols that we're going to have in place, from getting on the school bus to hand sanitizer, and what the classrooms will look like. Because as you know, all of our schools look so different, all the facilities. So it's going to be important to see what each classroom will look like for each grade level. That I'm actually working on is having some communications going out for parents to really speak with the principal before they go on and make their decision. We've talked about the surveys going out, and a lot of parents are kind of have their mindset. So we just want to really emphasize to keep an open mind until you see what our protocols look like and what a typical day will look like.
Thank you very much, Lena. Thank you.
I also want to introduce, for those of you may remember, she did a really nice presentation a year or so back with Pagels, and she's really hit the ground running, and I'm very thankful for all she's done so far. Marissa Akampora, again, she's worked really closely and spent a lot of time touring the buildings, working with Chris, working with Meg, working with all of our principals and administrators, and helping us draft a plan. The plan will be more general, but we will have a plan ready to go to the state by Friday, the deadline, with 3 options: distance learning, a hybrid model, as well as our 180 full day. Marissa Akampora, welcome, Marissa. And again, we're right in the line of fire, but again, I know just the little I know and work with you, you seem like you're really up to the challenge and up to making this thing work.
Thank you so much. I've been very fortunate that every principal, every building level administrator has welcomed me into the building, has shown me through with ideas that I think everyone would be very impressed to hear, and we'll get some a little bit of a taste of tonight as you hear their presentations. But the eye is really on student success, and I think that everybody is thinking creatively about ways to make that happen. My role in this process is really to serve as a liaison between the buildings and the administration and the families, the Board of Education, and to really bring ideas together and to represent them well for all of our stakeholders. And I'm very proud that I get to do that for West Haven. And I'm very excited to work with the administrators, the staff, and the students in this capacity. So I thank you so much for offering me this role.
Thank you, Marissa. And again, you're going to see as we move along towards the summer, we'll put a lot more details into place. We will look for that guidance from the state of Connecticut, but understand that we've been going through various scenarios and things that could or may not happen. And, you know, we've appropriated, and Matt will talk a little bit about it yet. We've got some time before we hand in our CARES request of how we think we're going to spend that money and how we're going to make the building safer. Again, you know, things have been moving along, and I have not seen a summer since, I'll tell you what, the last time, and I don't think it was this busy with as many people involved, was when we reorganized the schools. Those of you that go back to, you know, 2009 or 2010, whenever it was, where we made Carrigan, went from a middle school to an intermediate, and we realigned the schools. It's been busy, it's been hectic, but it's been fun, and the days go by. One thing before I turn it over to Wendy to talk about the results of our survey, I want to, usually this time of year, I always give the board a status report on hiring. Well, I'm pleased to say that hiring, we are in really very, very good shape. However, as of today, we have, and not all of these are COVID related. In fact, we have about 16 teachers who may not, who aren't going to start the school year because of some kind of family medical leave, pregnancy, spouse had a baby, and some other things. We also have, as of today, nine people who've requested some type of an accommodation because they may be at a high risk for COVID. So while hiring hasn't been a problem, putting a qualified teacher in every classroom may be. And, Ann and I met today and talked about it. And, my priority is going to be every teacher who may be in a support role as of today may have to go into a classroom. We'll do our best to secure substitutes. However, keep in mind that qualified teachers who are prospective teachers are looking for jobs. And if they can't, if they're out trying to secure a job, they're not going to commit to us. So that is something that we are going to watch very carefully and closely as the summer goes on. I anticipate more letters as we get closer to the opening of school. And, one way or another, we're going to open our doors and we will have teachers in those classrooms. That is our first priority. But the board needs to be aware of that because, again, you see tonight we're hiring a bunch of people. We have a few more open jobs that we believe we're going to get filled. But the bigger concern today is, teachers who have requested some type of Family Medical Leave Act and or are at high risk because of COVID, or at least the doctors are saying they are. So it's something we're going to keep our eyes on. All right, lastly, you know that we had a survey up online. And Wendy Charbonneau, who's an assistant principal over at the high school, spearheaded that effort. We worked on with our committee the questions, and she did a great job of monitoring it and breaking it down. I don't think there's anything surprising in the survey. Wendy and I have spent a lot of time going over it. However, I would say, it's not a scientific survey. For example, there was a really high number of responses from Bailey, which seemed unusual, like off the charts when you consider the number of families in the district. But I'm going to turn it over now to Wendy and just have her break down the survey. But again, I think there are things that we should know so that we can address them. We're not going to take them as negatives like, oh my God, they're just trying to knock holes in us. We're going to work on finding ways to address them. So Wendy?
Yes, thank you. I also want to go along with that and say I tallied up the results from included every single result, but I want you to know that I could definitely tell that there were repeat, people that submitted it more than once. The survey was supposed to be one time per household. So I could tell that, but I still put all the results together as it is. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen to show you some of the data that was collected from that. So bear with me a moment. And I hope y'all can see that. So moving along. So this is the response breakdown right away. As you could see, I'm not going to read to you for it, but just to let you know, there were 1634 responses. And I figured out that there's about 3,920 families in the district. So just to take that into consideration, like I said, I definitely do feel that there were people that submitted more than multiple times. Over 1,500 were in English, 52 were in Spanish. And I put all the results together, and that's just a breakdown of the data. Elementary, PK to 4, 568. And there were people from outside our public schools, St. Lawrence, the preschools in the area. You had 270 from Kerrigan, and like Neil was saying, the 645 from Bailey, 537 were for the high school, and then there were 22 from just the other data. That 1% came from ACES, Eli Whitney, And I just included that so you guys had a breakdown of this, specifics of where these households were coming from. For our first question was basically, you know, it says it right at the top, per this executive order of the governor, will you send your kid to school? And as you could see, 41% are definitely a no. And right now we have this not sure of 30%, pretty much with the same with the yes. So obviously I would like to see us, you know, with all the stuff that Lena's going to do and with Marissa, and really, you know, advocate for all our safety protocols and showcasing those and move these people to show that we are safe to start school and get some of these people to move from not sure to yes, and maybe some of our no's back to a yes. The biggest thing that I saw was that they are definitely not comfortable with the bus transportation. As you could see, this big number here, 52% are not comfortable. They feel, you know, based on some of the responses, which I'll get into in a little bit, they're just really uncomfortable with the numbers on the bus. And so then we went into a comfort level for mandatory mask wearing and an optional mask wearing. And I'll break that down more to you when I get to those open-ended responses. But obviously the majority are very comfortable with mandatory mask wearing, and this optional, they're not feeling very happy about that it would be an optional thing. And there were a bit of extremes of that, but it should, overall, the majority of the responses felt that everybody should be wearing a mask because that's how it should be. They were comfortable with daily temperature checks, but you know, it's not mandated for us to do it, but they are very comfortable with that. Everybody's very comfortable with our increased access to hand sanitizer and soap. Desk spaced apart when possible. They are definitely would like that. They'd like to hear more about the classroom sanitization. How is that going to happen? When, how often is it going to happen? And again, this number is on the bus that goes along with their comfort level.
Went to this.
And the increased cleaning of the high touch surfaces. Very good. They would like to see that happen. A little concerned about the numbers in the cafeteria, and obviously very concerned about having large gatherings of students. So bringing that to the end, it was really the open-ended, and I really did read through 1,600. I went through all of it line item by line item, and I kind of summarized it here. The biggest one was the mask wearing. How is it going to be enforced? If they're not wearing it puts others at risk. They also felt like, you know, maybe middle school level, some of the responses, and high school level was like kids playing around and teasing each other. And they think it's funny to like take the mask off and even cough on somebody. What's going to be the enforcement of that? They want to know the length of time that especially for the younger kids, that they'll have to wear the mask. They were concerned with air quality in the school, students having asthma, the heat being a factor, special ed. That was a big thing that we were going to have to work on addressing, and what that's going to look like. And there were several responses about like, even if a student could be medically excused from actually wearing a mask. Well, right now we're a mandatory mask in a public space. We're all supposed to wear masks. So they don't feel very comfortable with that. And they said that, well, if they can't wear the mask because they're medically, then they should have a face shield. So that's just something that we have to look at. The other thing was about the definite protocols that we have to distribute and send those out. What if there's a COVID outbreak? What happens? What are the next steps? How is this going to affect attendance policy? We need to break that down. They wanted to know about contact tracing. And I think this goes along to the last point here with protocols. If allowing a sick student to return, do they have to stay home for 14 days? And then if they're sick, who were they around? And then does that go against HIPAA to find out that this student or this staff member, the person was, and who got it, and then causing all those kinds of problems. And then who do they report to the positive test from students and staff? So those are just some things that I think are very easy to address. And I know that we're going to have that. Marissa's been working on kind of like those kinds of things, and we will have those in place. At the end of the day, parents just really want to know, again, we talked about this, how does the speech OT work? How do those things really work out? What are the class sizes exactly going to be? What does each grade level look like? You know, and I think those videos are going to really sell that. I think that's really, as a parent myself and seeing what it looks like to walk into my child's shoes when I walk in that building, I think that's just what they need. They want to see what the cafeteria is going to look like. How is recess going to work? How many kids are going to go to the bathroom at one time? You know, there were many people that voiced about having a hybrid schedule for now and then opening full time in the spring. And then, of course, the buses, they would like to know how many students are allowed on the bus, what happens if they're not wearing a mask. We are going to be giving out masks, but they want to know about the PPE distribution. And there were even quite a few people about the chorus and the singing, like they voiced their concerns about how, you know, that's a high risk category for chorus and singing. And they wanted to know how that's going to work. And there was a group, I would say I had definitely a couple handfuls of responses about temperatures should be taken and like, you know, should that be obviously a before the bus responsibility, you know, so just things that we definitely have to look at and address so we can definitely make people feel more comfortable about sending their students back to school. And I think that we have, as an administrator who's been listening to some of what's going on, I think our plan in place is showing that kids will be safe. And I would feel comfortable sending my child back to a West Haven school if I lived in West Haven. And that's what I have for you.
Wendy, thank you for all your work. Really very helpful. But again, unless I'm wrong, there's nothing on there that should have shocked us as far as the results go. But it is our job to address those concerns. There's no question about it.
Absolutely.
So with that, what I've asked is, you can see I have Judy from the elementary schools, and then I have Rob, Rich, and Dana here to address some of what's going on to prepare the schools and some of the things that we've done and we're looking at. Chris Everone is also online in case anybody has any questions. Again, he's been to all of the buildings and is as familiar with our buildings and what we have for equipment and supplies and things like that as anybody in our city. You know, there are also some things that we're working on. If the questions come up and I can answer them, I certainly will. Judy, why don't we start with you? Again, I know, and again, keep in mind, no one worked in isolation. We even worked between levels. We've had a couple of meetings. We have another meeting scheduled next week, but Judy has spent a lot of time with the other 5 elementary school principals, and she's here representing them because, you know, while the physical plants are different and may require some minor adjustments, we don't want one school not looking totally different than the other 5 elementary schools. So Judy, and thank you again for joining us today.
So I'm going to share our plans tonight. As Neil said, it's the 6 elementaries. We've gotten together multiple times. We all want to be in the same place. We did put a draft together, and I want to credit AJ Palermo for that, and Taryn Dryan for helping with compiling the orders in the buildings. One thing we did when we started together is that we all agreed that our job is to make sure the students and the staff feel safe coming back to school and that they have a positive environment, especially for our new little kindergartners coming in. As each school has similar needs, there was areas that we'll be customizing for our own buildings, but we plan on safety first without compromising teaching and learning. And what I'll share for you is the universal plans of the 6 buildings. Again, there'll be some things that will be different. I know the common thing is the busing and the masks, so I'm going to start with those. We talked a lot about masks. There will be paras that will meet the children getting on the bus and will be on the buses. They'll make sure the children are wearing their masks. When they get on the bus, we will have extra masks to be passed out. Children will probably file into the bus to the back and work towards the front, and so on for dismissal off the bus. The masks themselves, and I know Neil has talked, I don't think we give our children as much credit. I do watch in the stores as I'm going out there. I love observing children, and it's funny how you see children like they've automatically gotten used to a mask. You see them in the store with their parents. I think that in most cases, we will be able to enforce wearing masks. Again, they'll be wearing masks in school. We will have mask breaks, we're going to call them. Some of the ideas that we had for that is, of course, they can't wear them when they're eating breakfast, snack, or lunch. But we will have the children maybe get up and walk around outside of school with their mask off. Maybe certain rooms in the school, we can sit and distance them more. But they will have opportunities to take the mask off. Of course, we were talking also about speech and language. We are planning on having kind of borders so that the children, you know, can visually see you teaching, and your mask, the teacher's mask will be off so they can see the mouth, especially in kindergarten and first, where we're forming letters and sounds. You know, there'll be other exceptions for that. But we've thought of different ideas where the children will be able to take their mask off and have sort of a break. Face shields, of course, won't be in place of masks, but in certain teaching instances, you know, a face shield may be made worn again so that we can make sure that the children can see the teacher. And I don't know if any of you have seen, they've been very creative with the mask. They have a mask out there that actually has a plastic piece where the mouth is, so you can see what the person is saying or their emotions, smiling, and so on. Some of the teachers have even gone off to order that for themselves. As far as breakfast, that will be delivered to all the classrooms so that the children will not be, you know, walking around the buildings getting their breakfast like it was done in the past. Lunch, on the most part, we looked for a big area that the children could be spread apart, but see each other, still have some opportunity to socialize. So we've thought about the gym would be a good spot. We've talked to Meg. Meg's been very good about telling us, you know, she's going to give us bag lunches so that they'll have 2 choices and they'll be able to take one of those choices, sit down, see their friends, but yet be in distance from each other. I've also, and the other administrators have talked about it too, maybe picnic tables outside. I know I have a beautiful courtyard that the teachers already bring the kids out into that they can use for eating. So we're trying to be creative with different things like that. Outdoor recess, they'll be separated in their different cohorts. We're going to have organized games. The children will
The fun of Zoom.
have their mask off during recess. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're back on, Judy. You froze for a second. Yep.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we're encouraging the teachers to get the students out as much as possible. For instance, I'm sure you've heard of our morning meetings. Well, you know, take the chairs outside, sit. They could sit in the grass, space them. At that point, they don't have to wear a mask and they can be participating in morning meeting. So the teachers themselves, and I've met with my staff, and I know that all the other buildings have met with their staff too, and has gotten many ideas on what we can do to connect with the children. And
We lost you again, Judy.
make learning still a fun as well as this connection. Can you hear me?
Yep. You're back on. Yep.
Okay.
Judy, take off your mute button. There
I
you
don't
go.
know. Okay. I don't know why it keeps doing that. Anyways, okay. So as far as special areas like the art, the music, the science, they will be going into the classrooms and working with the cohorts. Gym will be outside. All of us have wonderful areas, blacktop grass areas that the children can have gym outside. Technology, we're going to have, the kids are going to have their own individual Chromebooks. 3rd and 4th already have them in the classrooms. And we're getting some additional ones that, you know, our 2nd graders can use so that they're only going to be using one device. Let's see what else. Of course, we won't be having field trips and assemblies and all that just yet. Hopefully in the spring we'll be able to. We are getting an extra LPN to help out our nurses. So, you know, there's those children that come to the office and the nurse's office constantly. They're going to still have someone there, but we also have an extra support person to help. We're going to use different opportunities to remind the children of, you know, good hygiene, washing of the hands, using of the hand sanitizer. We're going to have stations, you know, with different hand sanitizing stables. Let's see. Desks in the classroom are all going to be separated. I know many of us talked. We have those wonderful tables in the classroom that we do one-to-one, and we're more or less removing those from the classroom right now so that we have plenty of space to move our desks facing in the same direction. And again, we're going to use outdoor instruction as much as possible so that the children can separate, take their mask out, see the teacher teaching, and, you know, get a little bit of a break there. Those are some of the highlights of what we talked about. Again, things like arrival and dismissal might look a little different in each building, depending on the door, you know, the amount of doorways coming in. I know that I have a lot of entrances, so my kids can be separated easily coming into the building. Dismissal, we may be staggering our times for the children to be dismissed so that we have crowds of children going out at the same time. So those are some of the things that we've talked about so far.
Can I just comment, and then certainly if you have any questions for Judy, and then we'll let her go if when she's finished. Just things that need to be mentioned as part of the COVID money for the CARES Act. We are putting in for bus monitors or paying the paras to service kids in the elementary schools. They'll make sure that masks are on. Again, as far as temperature checks, you know, our medical advisor, frankly, is not advising that kids' temperatures be taken every day. And even if they could, I have not heard a logistical way to get that done in a safe manner. Open to it, but being advised against it right now. We are planning on adding a security guard at each of the elementary schools so that there'll be somebody watching at the door in addition to somebody circulating throughout the building, and they'll be switching. I've talked to Mike Ebron today. You all know Mike, the head security guy at the high school who oversees it. He's asked that each member get a walkie-talkie. Dana's going to give them limited access to Power School so that if a parent comes, we can kind of check and see if a child's ready to be dismissed or if a person's on the list. And Judy mentioned nursing assistants because we do have to have an isolation room. So, you know, person can't be in two places at one time. We are spending a good chunk of that CARES money on those three things, personnel or adding to personnel. Judy mentioned computers. After listening to some of the concerns of the elementary principals, I decided that the computers that we ordered to do our one-on-one up through grade 12, because we got the Dell laptop computers for all the students at the high school, it made more sense to pass them down to grades 1 and 2. And anything we have currently in grades 1 and 2, plus what we have in the kindergartens and preschools, I don't know that we'll have enough to be one-on-one, but we'll be close. So that if we did have to, again, if we had to leave or go out of school, we may be able to lend out computers. We will have extra computers from the Yale donation and some of the other places that I mentioned. So again, that, you know, the point that Judy raised, we won't have to share computers. A child will have their own laptop or Chromebook. So I think that that's something that, you know, came out of talking and discussion. I think one of the things that we're really lucky on, I got a call from a reporter a couple of weeks ago and asked me about our emergency plans. And Judy mentioned recess and doing the kinds of drills that we normally do. The good thing is, with the exception of Savin Rock, and even that's a pretty good area of land, and they've got the park, albeit down the street. All of our schools have plenty of land, which is a good thing. So we can separate the kids. The other thing is too, We are working on a plan to get the gyms retro to cafeterias, and Meg's been working really closely. But one of the things we're going to watch carefully is furniture. I do not want to spend CARES money. It's something I told all of the administrators, on furniture that's only going to be used for 5 or 6 months, and then we're going to have to find a place to store it. So we'll look at that. I mean, the other option obviously is keeping kids in their rooms to eat. That can get messy. So we'll have more discussion on that. But again, right now the preference of the excuse me of the elementary principals is to turn the gyms into cafeterias, which will work up until it gets cold out. Although gym teachers have gotten creative and they've gone on stages, they've gone in classrooms. If we're not using the cafeterias, they can be like the old all-purpose rooms. Like, I want to show my age, like when I went to school. So those are some of the things that we've discussed and will continue to discuss. And Judy, if I've left anything out, let me know. If anybody has any questions.
There's two things I want to add. One is as far as when you mentioned the security guard and parents, you know, again, if they want to pick up their kids earlier, if they drop them off late, their security guard will meet them at the door. They will sign them in, sign them out. Parents will be given the option for PPTs or 504s if they want to come in for a meeting, but we will also offer the phone conferencing or a Zoom. But if they do come in, we're going to ask them to wear face masks and have a temperature check. And the other thing I want to add is, in talking to my staff, they are so excited about coming back to school and seeing the kids. They really miss seeing the kids. And I think that's such a plus that they're really looking forward to it. So any questions?
I saw Rose. Oh, I'm sorry.
Let's take this opportunity to open up questions for the board members to Judy at this time. Does anybody have a question?
I'm seeing Rose has a question. Rose.
Oh, I don't see Rose. Okay, Rose, go ahead.
Thank you, Neil. I'm sorry, Judy, while you were talking, my Zoom did funny things. So I don't know if I'm repeating something that you already covered. And if I am, I apologize. But I did hear you say that you want to do as many lessons as you can outside, which I think is like a great idea. But my concern is schools like Forest and Savin Rock and Washington, I think too, don't really have like a grassy area to do that. So are there any thoughts of what we could do to help those schools to have more outside time?
Well, I mean, you could still bring them out on like morning meeting if they had their chairs in Savin Rock. I mean, I taught there 20 years. The lower grades have those outside doors. They could take their chairs and find a nice shady spot, and they could sit outside doing lessons that way too. You know, I mean, the teachers are pretty good about thinking through these things. You know, so that's what I would suggest. I know they have that one side that's, is that Park Street, it's a grassy area, it's small, so the first grades on that side might be able to go outside and sit. So, you know, taking chairs out, anything like that, I think would be helpful. You know, Washington has the same issue with the parking lot, but again, if they find a shady area, maybe they could go out that way. Forest, I know he does have some grassy areas too. So
Yeah, Washington actually has, I'm sorry, Washington actually has a large, we're going to build a school, in fact, behind the school. There's a really big field back there. There's some wetlands if you get close. There's a gate fence back there, but there's a lot of land there. I think the one school is Savin Rock. But again, if you're not, the nice thing about Savin Rock is every class on the first floor has its own door, so they can kind of go outside that area as well and set up.
Will teachers be bringing out, like if kids are allergic to bee stings, we're going to bring EpiPens out and that type of stuff?
Yeah, the teachers are aware of all, you know, if anyone does have it, because that's always been a concern. I can tell you whenever we had PE lunch recess, you know, that's a concern. So the teachers will be aware and, you know, being very careful about that. And, you know, sometimes There's certain areas that I've seen around my building that the bees like to hang out. So yeah, we will be prepared for that.
Okay. The other thing is the arrival and dismissal. You touched on it towards the end, but I'm really concerned because you would have kids coming, but they'd be K through 4 on a bus. So they were all mixed up on the bus. How will you divide them and get them into the buildings?
Okay, so this is what I'm thinking of with my little ones. Kay always sits towards the front of the bus anyways. So we have the pair is going to sit the little ones towards the front. As the children come in on the bus, she will assign them seats in, you know, as they come in, starting from the back and working its way towards the front of the bus. They should have assigned seats so that it's not going to be a question when they come in, you know, where to sit every day. And getting off the bus, logically, we'd have the kids in the front get off first and then follow through. That's why the para will make sure it's a very organized entrance and exit getting on and off the bus. You know, so she'll be calling them by name or by seat. You know, you can get up and get off from the front towards the back.
How many buses do you usually have, like, per school?
We're all different because some schools you have more walkers than others. I can tell you I have 5 buses. And another thing that's really good this year, the community house, who has our after school program, has approached all of us, and the after school programs, instead of going to Malloy on the bus, will be housed inside the building. So my morning program and afternoon programs in the building, they won't be riding the bus.
That's good.
Yeah, so that'll be good. You know, that's extra room on the bus, and also we're not mixing kids. You know, they're just in their little cohort.
Are those after school and before school programs in all the elementary schools or just at McCrill?
I think they all have the before and after school. Some were, they had both housed in the morning and the afternoon, and some, such as mine, only had the morning housed in the building. In the afternoon, the children would get on the bus and go to Malloy School.
Okay, that's good. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Are there,
Just,
oh, go ahead, Neil.
No, I'm sorry. The other thing I wanted to mention was that, you know, we are going to have the monitors on the bus, and hopefully they can keep the kids calm until the teacher gets out and greets the kids, which I think I think that is a real concern, is getting the kids off the bus safely and into a line. That's a challenge on the best of days. So we'll work on that. One thing I'm not counting on, by the way, I wanted to mention is, you know, look, our community, I'm not convinced that more people are going to drive their kids to school. That sounds like a plan today in the middle of July. We're not going to do that. However, if we do get an influx of that, we're certainly not going to go on the bus to count kids to reduce buses. You know, we will take advantage of that to reduce the density of the buses.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Are there any other questions? Neil, do you see anybody raising their hand? I don't.
No.
Okay. Oh, Rosie has one more question.
One more question. I'm sorry, you talked about the desks all facing the same way, but how far apart will the desks be?
Well, we're measuring them right now, you know, like it depends on the classroom. We're kind of like staggering them in some of the classrooms, depending on how, you know, some classrooms are wider than longer. So we're going to try and keep them, well, I say 6 feet, 3 to 6 feet, however, all facing the same way. Again, the classrooms are all different. So you know, that's something we're working on now. And another thought we had was we're going to put tape on the floor because, you know, desks have legs sometimes and they keep moving during the day. So if we put tape down, you know, that'll keep them in their spots so that they're not moving near each other.
Judy just raised a good point too. It's, you know, if everyone's wearing a mask, it doesn't need to be 6 feet. You can go as close as 3 feet. However, you know, we'll do the best we can to distance to 6 feet, but in some cases it may just not be possible. But if you're wearing a mask, 3 feet is acceptable, is my understanding.
Did you also say that the kindergarten kids won't be sitting in desks? They'll still have their tables, kindergarten and preschool?
kindergarten has the tables, whether they're circle or, there's a couple different shapes, but we do have clear borders in between the students so they can see their friends, they can work, they're still socializing, but they're spaced out, and then they'll have their mask on. We didn't want to put little ones in desks. I think that would be very difficult for them.
Oh, I agree, totally.
Yeah,
Okay,
you understand.
get it. Thank you.
Okay.
No more questions.
Okay, thank you, Rosie. Neil, moving on.
Sure, I want to go, we'll go up the line to Rich.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to attempt to share my screen as well. Just put together a little bit of a PowerPoint that's been kind of mine and Alicia, my assistant principal, our guidance throughout this. Really worked well with Meg, Marissa, Jill, head of the nursing department, on coming up with the plan, and then, constantly sharing it. And then you solve one problem, you create two more, and then you kind of work on just making your way through that to solve as many problems as you can. So hopefully this works out. So can you see that?
Yes.
All right. So really, we tried to focus as much as we could. Kerrigan's pretty unique in the idea that we have the ability to look as an intermediate school a little bit more like a middle school. Rob and I have also worked pretty closely together, talking on the phone constantly. What's he doing? What am I doing? But in this situation, what we really tried to do is dial back and have Kerrigan look a heck of a lot more like an elementary school. So really, this PowerPoint leads all the way through the day, from starting up with entry. I'm anticipating more of our parents, as Neil just mentioned, to drop off. We have 19 full-size school buses, 5 medical buses, and a handful of drop-offs, not a ton, but I'm certainly anticipating that being increased as far as volume. So what I'd like to do is to try to get students into the building a little bit earlier. So I'm working with some of our paraprofessionals, some teacher staff as well, to try to get that school day off a little bit earlier, to try to front load the schedule, if you will, to try to get students inside the building. Move traffic a little bit quicker, have parents drop off at the rear of the school, thus not opening any of my buses until 8:10. As the students come off the buses, they would head right inside the building, rather than, again, that trying to find out those times in those areas where students really congregate together, trying to eliminate those as best as we can. By having the students not wait outside, it's a problem that the high school has, certainly Bailey, and we've had in the past as well. By having students come right off the bus and into the school, it eliminates that 5 to 6 minutes of really congregation time out in front of the building. Utilizing some different doors, some different pathways, specific pathways into the building, and having students go right into the classroom. Again, in the past, we used to look a lot more like a middle school by having students use lockers. I'm looking at eliminating those this year. Students would come right into the building, go right to the classroom, thus eliminating some of those touch points and some of those crowding areas in the hallways as well. In thinking about cohorting, we would certainly have the students stay together as a cohort. Right now, our 5th grade classrooms are up a little bit, 20, 21, 22. Our 6th grade classrooms are a little bit lower, 18, 19, topping out at around 20. So rather than having our students switch classrooms following that middle school model, we would have the teachers come into the classroom, so they'd be the ones moving. So the students would stay together as a cohort in that one homeroom for the majority of the day. The elimination of lockers means that materials are limited, touch points are limited, and the students are really staying in that classroom for the majority of the day. We found just by doing that, and I'll speak about special area teachers in just a little bit, we were able to eliminate about 70% of student movement throughout the day. We've also arranged for some welcome back bags for the students to have that will have masks. AJ came up with a great idea about having lanyards. When you do demask, you actually attach the lanyard to one of the ear loops so that you don't lose it. 10, 11, and 12-year-olds are bound to lose things, so the more we can help them hold on to them, the better. As well as some hand sanitizer, crayons, pens, pencils, so that they really don't have to share those supplies anymore. They'd be just bound right to that student. Students will also have access to hand sanitizer before they enter the classroom. And really, even in some of our more challenging classrooms, we've been able to get between 4. Some of our classrooms are enormous, and some of the classrooms are on the small side, but we're averaging about 4 to 6 feet with about that roughly 20 students per classroom model. Our biggest goal has been to eliminate tables. All the efforts that we've gone, to kind of move away from that old school one-room schoolhouse model to have lots of grouping, lots of desks clustered together. All that is being removed. I had some classrooms that had 3, 4, up to 5 kidney-shaped tables, small 6-foot tables, 4-foot tables, where you could actually have one teacher and 3 or 4 students clustered around. Once we were able to move those out, we're in the process of doing that with our building maintenance staff now. We found that we had a heck of a lot more room to really space out student desks. So it really provided more room to have a safer space between the desks. Breakfast and lunch. We do breakfast in the classroom anyway. It is delivered. So students would be eating their breakfast in the classroom, eliminating, again, that movement in the building and those touch points as students input their numbers. In working with Meg, we also came up with the idea to, again, an old school fashion, to pre-order for lunch. So that way you could not prepare too much, and to have enough food to go around. And we were also one of the crews that switched our cafeteria and our gymnasium. The cafeteria kind of becomes an old school multi-purpose room, or an all-purpose room, as Neil mentioned before, that if it were a rainy day or weather didn't cooperate, we could certainly do gym inside that area. And half of it would be used for doing prep for our lunchroom staff and our caf staff. Our numbers right now are up. We're at about 910, possibly 920 for total school enrollment. So we definitely need room for our cafeteria staff to prepare in order to move those meals throughout the building. And then the idea of, as soon as we walked the gym and saw just how big it was, what we came up with is the idea of using the gym as our cafeteria. 2 mirrored sides. We were able to work with Meg on some minimal choices, probably just 2, a hot meal and a cold meal. Again, because those numbers are, those orders are being placed in the morning, there'd be no input of lunch numbers, and use of student desks instead of tables. We have enough desks at Kerrigan where we can spread out. I keep using kind of the idea of a checkerboard where one's here, one's here, one's here. So no one's sitting directly across from you and no one's sitting next to you. And it should be easy to accomplish 2 things. Number one, hitting that 6-foot distance should be relatively easy. And also based on the idea of having desks rather than a communal table, we'll be able to assign seats. So as a student comes in, they'll go to the same desk every day. Again, just eliminating some of that movement. Hand sanitizing stations at strategic points throughout that cafeteria gymnasium area at the start and at the finish. Recess. Right now, recess is only for our 5th graders. And the idea of keeping students together as a cohort, I think we can still accomplish outside, weather permitting. Designated areas and really specific scheduled times where students would be able to go outside 5th grade and still interact with one another, but still stay together as a cohort. Teachers can allow for controlled socially distanced activity and motor breaks as they're needed. Kerrigan has a very, very big outdoor space with 2 baseball fields, a soccer field all the way in the back. We also have some areas that teachers have used in the past to do some hiking. There's a playground area. If we chose to block it off, there's the playground, the top pool parking area, and also the basketball court. So in order to get to all of our clusters to have recess outside in their own designated area, there's definitely enough room outside to do that, as well as to utilize even more of that area for PE and gym being outside as well. Special area teachers, again, talking about having teachers push into the classroom. Library, art, science, and our 6th grade computers would be able to utilize the Chromebooks in the classroom. So our 6th grade computer class would push into the classroom. In my mind, I still want to have PE as a motor break, get students out and moving, a time to demask, to get outside, and not combining groups, so still keeping the same 20 or 22 students together. And also our music rooms are pretty large based on the idea that Kerrigan was a middle school. Those are some really large rooms with tiered staging almost. So the idea of still having students travel within the building as a motor break, a time to demask, and go to those music areas, I think music will look different, not having choral singing what a traditional music class in the past might look like. But I think there's still the place to be able to go to a different room to see some different scenery throughout the day and do it safely. Also, our instrumental music and chorus, I met with those guys last week, and I think again there's enough room where we could still have music and chorus, but again rethink it, utilizing the band room, our auditorium, and the auditorium stage, limiting student engagement. I also, as well as trying to limit that, I think a number of our parents will be a little bit apprehensive possibly about having a student take an instrument, just knowing that air is traveling through a trumpet or a saxophone or something like that. So I think automatically our numbers will be down, but I would hate to lose all that momentum that we've built up. So I think music and chorus can look different, but still be maintained. I think it might look more like lessons, rather than 8-to-1 or 10-to-1, it might be 4-to-1. Distance type of recitals, possibly over Zoom, and certainly no large performances. But the idea of keeping those programs that we've worked so hard to build up, in my heart and in my head, I think we can do that safely and still maintain some type of an instrumental music program and a chorus program. Extra cleaning, obviously, throughout the day as we can. We're the second biggest building behind the high school, but I think by putting extra hand sanitizing stations strategically throughout the building, working with our teachers to really monitor who's using the lab and when, avoiding that elementary school model where all the students head to the lab at one time, but certainly trying to work with our building maintenance staff on hitting those high touch areas and constantly doing a sweep throughout the building to try to stay on top of all the bathrooms within the school. The nurses station, I met with Jill last week, and she's also requesting, as well as the 2 nurses that we have on staff, she's requesting 1 extra med tech to assist with possibly increased numbers that are coming to the medical station to see the nurse. And then we were also able to find a good area, which is actually right just across the way from the nurse's room right now. Has good ventilation, has a bathroom that we can use as a triage area. There's a phone, and there's actually a way to, if a student were to show up as symptomatic for COVID or show some of those symptoms, there's a way to actually exit the student. There's an egress where they wouldn't even have to use one of the main hallways or the main entrance to the building. There's a separate exit where they'd be able to head out of the building as well. So it was a no-brainer to take that area over. It's just off the locker room. And dismissal, possibly the idea based on a higher volume, if we do have a lot more parents who are picking up and dropping off, possibly moving that up just a little bit to see. Again, that could be changed, but based on my initial gut would be that we would have more parents dropping off and picking up. And our buses start standard at 2:30, again, with 19 full-size school buses, strategically placing teachers throughout the hallways and more at their doorways to work as a hallway monitor, and releasing students. If you have 3 or 4 students who ride the same bus, you'd have to release them one at a time, allowing for just a couple of seconds, a bit of a beat in between every student hitting the hallway. That as they hit the main hallway, they'll certainly fall into line a little bit to really do what we can to decrease that clustering or that ability for all the students to kind of huddle together. And that's really it. That kind of starts the day and takes you all the way through the end of the day with dismissal. The biggest things we were able to try to focus on were the idea of cohorting all of our students and keeping them together, eliminating a lot of that movement within the school itself, having our special area teachers push in. The biggest hurdles for us were cafeteria, but once we realized that we could use the gym pretty effectively just based on the room that's there, and then beginning of the day and end of the day. By holding the students on the bus for just a little bit longer, it eliminated that congregation point that ourselves, Bailey, and the high school kind of constantly struggle with. But getting rid of lockers means that the students funnel right into the building and into the classroom. So eliminating lockers and again, those congregation areas as best as we could.
One thing I should have mentioned, because Rich brought up, cleaning the touch points and our custodial staff. Our custodial staff is stretched pretty thin. One of the things that we are looking at is increasing. We need to work with the union on this. Is bringing in part-time cleaners that would spend the day cleaning the various lavatories and high touch point areas, so that we can, the custodians can work on the things that they're used to working on, cleaning the cafeterias, emptying the pails, and, basically just keeping the buildings clean. So the extra things, we are going to look at bringing in at least one cleaner, maybe in the larger buildings, 2 cleaners per day to go around and sanitize.
Does anybody have any questions? Rosie, unmute, please. There you go.
All right, there I go. I'm sorry, I'm full of questions.
That's all right.
Rich, I have 2 questions. One, will there be any more after-school activities at Kerrigan, or those are done?
So I believe Community House would still function, but Park and Rec would not. So Community House takes place in the cafeteria right now, and even based on the limited number of students, we'd certainly have enough room to do that.
Right, and you wouldn't have like drama or basketball or any of that?
So it would be difficult with the gym. We don't have any extracurriculars along those lines. They don't pick those up until they move over to Rob at Bailey. So we don't have the after-school teams and things along those lines. using things for park and rec, or with the gym being occupied, we'd be hard pressed to move 200 plus desks every day. So that's by the time winter rolls around, we're all hoping for some different things. But again, community house is the only kind of hard and fast thing that we do. That would be in the CAF. And even in speaking with Anne Marie when we met last week, she has ideas not only for just to keep those programs going, because drama is so successful. Having that massive of a program would certainly not work, just based on the amount of students that take place and then the performances that we put on. But again, something that looked or felt more like lessons or small skits or things like that, just taking this big entity and turning it into something small and manageable with a handful of students rather than the amount that we tried to reach. She's on board for anything, and has already sent more than one email to that effect, that she's had her gears are turning right now for how to keep those programs going for sure.
And the busing thing again, you said you would have buses at your school by 2:30. And I'm assuming that Bailey's up next, and Bailey gets out at like 2:10, 2:15. Are they the same buses? Or
No, so our buses come, so basically the buses move to the high school first, then to Bailey, then to us. So they've always gone that way. So Bailey dismisses first, and then probably about half of his buses are used for us, for our runs.
And there's still, with all these other things we have to do now to get kids, there will be enough time to get from Bailey to Kerrigan?
I don't see it changing really, unless he's vastly changed up his dismissal plans. Our dismissal plans still look and feel about the same, with the exception of, again, in my heart of hearts, I anticipate an increase on parent drop off. I know that on some snowy days when we've had late openings and things like that, our numbers can greatly vary as far as parent drop off. Normally it's not that bad and we can move the kids in pretty quickly. But if you get that one real cold day, all of a sudden we'll have an extra 50 or 60 parents who will drop off. I'm anticipating right now that, again, if a parent has the ability to drop off, they might be wary of putting their kids on the bus for whatever the reason, and for some of the obvious reasons. So they may choose to drop off. I'm anticipating that. So what I'd like to do is plan, again, to front load that schedule, to have those students come in. If I failed to mention before, I apologize. I'm looking to staff outside to bring those students in, as well as inside in the cafeteria, where they can safely distance from one another and be kind of in a holding pattern until they move to their classes at 8:10. At the end of the day, again, based on, if you know Kerrigan, that one way in, one way out, if I can front load that schedule even at the end of the day to move a lot of those parents out quickly who are doing pickup, my bus dismissal is done between 2:45 and 2:50 every day on a normal day. So that wouldn't change really at all. That timing really doesn't change. It's the anticipation of the parent drop off that I'm worried about.
All right, thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you, Rosie. Are there any other questions?
Move on to Rob.
On to Rob.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me. First off, before I start, I do want to, again, I think Rich had mentioned it, and Judy as well. The teamwork that I've been a part of over the last few, actually, let me say not the last few weeks, back into March, starting with Neil, right on down. This administrative group has worked as a team. We're meeting regularly with Neil throughout the summer. I really am proud to be a part of that. And, you know, Rich had mentioned the phone calls back and forth. So yes, I'm calling him, he's calling me, I'm calling Dana, she's calling me. And, you know, being in the middle there, it's real important that we, you know, we definitely have our own issues and things from school to school, but we certainly want to, as Neil said earlier, look as consistent as we can. So again, I thank everybody with the administrative team in this district. As you know, board members, you've got a lot of good people working for you down here. I'd also like to thank the Bailey staff. I spent several days 2 weeks ago meeting with them in small groups in our auditorium, voluntarily, of course, in-person meeting. My first thing I always say to people is I don't have the best idea in the room all the time. So, you know, you certainly, when you surround yourself with good people, you get the good ideas. So the plan that I'll present tonight is really the reflection of a lot of people working together. Now, of course, Rich had to do his screen sharing to show me up. I don't have that. I'm with Neil there, so I won't. But I will provide you. I do have this in writing, and I did get it to Neil. So if anybody wants it, I can get it.
We'll get them out to you. Actually, I have the from all the levels, with the exception of Dana, and I'll have Dana put something together in the next day or two.
Yep.
Sure.
So I'll just kind of go down a bullet pointed plan that I have here. Again, when Neil directed us to set up a plan for a full-time in-person learning, we did have challenges in the beginning, and then we kind of come together. And I also want to reach out to Paul and Stacy, who I know are out there watching. They were my on my right side and my left side, social distance, as we work through this. Our main issue was cohorting kids, and we will be cohorting kids at Bailey. We have 44 of them. 27th grade cohorts and 28th grade, and then 4 labs. And they are strategically cohorted as well. So academic teachers are going to move from classroom to classroom. They will stay in their own classrooms for the most part of the day. We'll talk more about breaks and things like that in a couple of minutes. Our special area teachers, you know, very similar to Rich, are going to be pushing into classrooms. That does include our physical education teachers. They're going to conduct their classes. They're going to go to the kids and get them, but they're going to be conducting their classes outside whenever possible. But art, computers, tech ed, all going into the rooms to work with the kids in their own cohort classrooms. I will say that once they step through our door, there's only one time that we will compromise the cohorts a bit, and that will be at lunchtime. There's no other way around that. Other than that, they are staying together and not working with any other students throughout the day. Obviously, they'll be working with different teachers. We will be using our academic support staff. Neil mentioned it, it's all hands on deck. So I am using some of my academic support staff in areas for special area type classes. And also they'll be there if we need them, if we are short staff on one day or for a length of time. We will be closing the gym and making that the cafeteria, just like Rich. It's much bigger than our normal cafeteria. So our plan is using every corner of it. We did meet with Meg as well. You know, one of the things I do have is 10 science rooms, and they have the tables in those science rooms. So we're not going to be able to have them do cooperative groups and small groups at those tables. So I've removed or am removing all of those science tables. Those are those black rectangular tables. We've got about 150 of them scattered throughout the 10 rooms, 10 science rooms. I'm going to use 100 of them in the cafeteria. And again, we've spaced it out. Are we going to be perfect 6 feet? No, but we'll be between 3 and 6 feet. Those rectangular tables are pretty good size. So our plan is to have one student eating at one end and another student eating at another end. So 2 per table. We could have anywhere from 150 to close to 200 students in the lunch waves. So if we have 100 tables in there, it's 2 per kid. We can handle that. Again, meeting with Meg, we're getting a plan with distributing the lunches from the gym. And we are going to be having kids, if you're familiar with Bailey, coming through the C wing and entering. And on most days, we'll be able to have the kids that are in the room leave through the outside doors. We do have, if you know Bailey, 2 doors on the opposite side of the gym where it leads to the outside. We're still dotting the I's and crossing the T's on how that will look. So we won't have a mass of students coming and a mass of students going, because we do have 5 minutes between each lunch wave. So again, a challenging thing, but doable, no question about it. So that's 5 lunch waves, 20 minutes per wave. And again, up to 200, more like 150 to 170. Our 7th grade is smaller than our 8th grade. Also, groups of students. Now at Bailey, once they move to the middle school, for the most part, they've got that freedom and independence to travel from class to class, travel to lunch, to and from. We will not allow any large groups of students or any classroom groups of cohorts or anything going through the building without teachers escorting them. We need to have teachers doing that. That's a little bit of the elementary look that Rich mentioned. We need to have teachers with larger groups of kids. Our transitions, though, are basically, it's one, other than coming and going, there's one transition for the kids throughout the day where they're going to be moving in big groups, and that would be going to the gym. And we are mapping out directions for each cohort to go and how they're going to get there, but they will be led by teachers. We are not opening the doors and say, go have lunch. You're going to have a cohort mess if that happens. So we definitely have teachers involved in bringing our kids to and from the classrooms. We have 5 student bathrooms at Bailey. We're going to close 2 of them. We're going to leave 3 strategically open throughout the building. My plan is, and I met with Mike Ebron, who's great with security. My plan is to have a security person at each bathroom. That's going to be their job to stand there, one kid in at a time. And, we'll obviously have the floor marked for spacing and social distancing. Lockers, as Rich, I believe, mentioned, will not be used. It's just not going to work with our, what we want to do. So students will be coming into the building at the beginning of the day and heading right to their classrooms, no lockers. And we won't worry about jackets early on in the year, but book bags will be on the back of their desks. And, as we move, hopefully we'll still be in school. Later in the year, we can have the jackets as well. Rich also mentioned large pieces of furniture and big tables. They are being removed from all classrooms. Basically, I told teachers what you're going to look at over there is 25 student desks from corner to corner using all available space in the classroom and a teacher desk. Really, what it may have looked like in the 70s and the 60s, those old-fashioned classrooms. I'll let them leave a file cabinet in there, maybe a bookcase if it's not protruding out. But other than that, all that large furniture that they use for groups and cooperative type things are being removed to storage. I mentioned the 10 science classrooms. Okay, I did talk to Chris. I think Chris is on tonight. By taking those tables out of the science rooms, it leaves me a problem. I need to put desks in them. So I'm working with Chris Everone with that. And we believe that there are chairs within the district where we can satisfy that need over at Bailey with the science classrooms. There will be classrooms that are not used for kids, computer labs, art rooms, wood shop rooms, even the library to a certain extent. All of those rooms, because one of the problems is when you have kids in cohorts and they're staying there, one of the problems is when teachers are collaborating or maybe having a meeting or something, there's not that space that they ordinarily would have with their own classroom. So we are going to be using classrooms that aren't being used for kids for office space for teachers to meet regularly. The cafeteria itself, I still want to talk more with my phys ed teachers. That could be used for a space. Again, I want them to go outside as much as possible to do their gym classes, but with severe weather and issues like that, we can use the cafeteria as a space for kids for a class or two. So that's how I'll use that. Again, I met with Jill Greco. We are in the midst of coming up with a COVID related symptom room for kids and where that would be. We need to make sure that we're strategic about it. Floors will be marked with arrows, social distancing markers and things like that. You've heard that for appropriate social distancing. Again, our schedule itself will be a regular schedule. We went back and forth on that. We are doing our rotation and all students will have their 4 academics and 2 special area choices. Teachers will have collab, that doesn't change. They'll have a preparation period as well. When we talk about no field trips, I think Judy had mentioned it, outside our little mini field trips. So yes, we do have to take care of our kids that go out there with allergies and things like that. So we're going to be in coordination with the nurse throughout all of that time. We're going to have walkie-talkies when the kids are out there and need to know that I can communicate to teachers and things like that. So we're preparing for, a lot of opportunities for teachers to take that break with those kids. They're going to have a lot of flexibility and freedom to do that because, obviously there's concerns in those rooms with those masks on. We are going to need to air them out a little bit as we, look at this differently and how we do classrooms and things like that. Fortunately, we're in a good position with Bailey. We do have a lot of space where we can take kids out in a safe in place and do lessons, or sometimes they're just going to need to go for a walk. And if we properly social distance out there, and speaking with Jill Greco, we certainly can take masks off as well when we're out there. So, we're going to be looking to do that. Bailey's staff is second to none. I know all principals will say that. And I do too. So our teachers will make this work. It's imperfect. Neil said nobody has all the answers. And I'm definitely in that group of people, but I have some answers. And working with a lot of good people, I think we've addressed our major concerns, the social distancing as much as possible, limiting transitions, cohorts, and again, safety for staff and students is very important. And again, I believe, I don't know if it was Rich or Judy, PPTs 504s, we will look to have them virtual, but any parent that insists, we will certainly make accommodations for them to come in and have meetings. And I've got about 950, I think, right now, as far as kids go. Our 7th grade, a little lower than usual, our 8th grade, pretty high. So, it's not the perfect world there, but I think, through a lot of planning and preparation and teamwork, I think we've got a viable plan for Bailey, and we're ready to go, one way or another, whether we're full-time in person or whether we're moving to a hybrid. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
I'll open it up to questions for Rob. Ro?
Rose, I'll tell you. But they're good questions. Thank you. Bring it on.
You're gonna be so sick of me, but
No, not at all.
I encouraged it.
Yes.
actually, Rob, you're off the hook. Neil, this question is really for you.
Okay.
You know, we keep talking about the rooms for the kids to go to when they're sick, the isolation rooms. Has the protocols been set for across the district for what happens when they go to that room and if a parent doesn't come and pick them up? And second, if a kid tests positive for COVID, what's the protocol for that? That's it.
I'm sorry, Jill has been working and getting guidance from our medical advisor, Dr. Williams.
Mhm.
From what I've seen on the plan, and even when the plan refers you to the health department, I believe further guidance is actually coming. I don't think they've got a standard protocol. As far as if a child and or a teacher test positives, it would be based on a percentage of those that test positive as to whether or not we would make a decision to close. My hunch right now would say that if anybody is positive or exposed, they would have to do some kind of self-quarantine, and we would then have to offer more of a distance learning model to that particular group or cohort. Again, I want to say that Rob, probably the most challenging group to cohort, the middle school kids, I really think has done an exceptional job. But if it happens, we'll have to, we'll have to examine who, what, why, and we'll go from there. But my gut tells me 14 days is going to have to be the standard of some kind of quarantine with the offering of distance learning.
Anything else? Anybody else?
Rosie.
Yes.
Rose,
Yes, Pat.
I have a question. This is not just for you, Rob. This is for, actually, it'll be for all levels with the literacy coaches and the math coaches. I'm assuming that they take them out in small groups. Is that generally what they do? Because I know in elementary, they take them out and then in small groups. And also, is that still going to happen? Are we still going to take those kids out that need math and literacy? And if you're using them as subs or you're using them in a different manner, is that going to be a problem with the union? Have we talked to the union so that we don't get any grievances? I mean, it's unusual circumstances. I would hope that they would work with us, but just to pass that bridge, cross that bridge, I want to make sure that we're covered in case we have to take people and put them in other situations or positions than they're used to having.
Well, first of all, it's our job to decide what jobs we need from our employees. We determine what the jobs are. I would hope that they would be reasonable and willing to work with it, but if they're not, too bad. We're going to put a teacher in the classroom, and I think it's a fight worth fighting. And ultimately, it may be the board that has to decide whether or not you uphold the grievance or not. But I don't see another way around it. Certainly.
I just want to make sure everybody.
I know what you're saying, Pat, and I think you raise a great point. But again, at some point we may. Let's hope it doesn't come to this, but we may have to fight that fight. However, as I said to you, there are. We decide what jobs we need as the employers. The one interesting point, and Ann and I discussed this morning. However, again, I think under the circumstances, again, I'd be willing to take it on is, title money or money targeted for specific areas that need to be used for additional support above and beyond without supplanting. That could be, in my mind, a bigger issue than a grievance. But I'd be happy to take that grievance on.
Pat, I think I can address, if I could cut in here talking about some of the pullout services, be it math, OT, PT, certainly EL as well. With library pushing into the classroom, what it does, it allows a much bigger space if we did have to do some pullout. And again, you'd be looking at doing if they can't push into the classroom and do it right way and do the program justice and reach the kids that they need, you might be able to pull out and use a bigger area where you could still meet with 3 or 4 or 5 students at a time, but rather than in the smaller reading area with one of those kidney-shaped tables, now you're in a much larger area in the library where students would be able to spread out. So you could kind of accomplish those same goals while still putting some good distance between those students. And to piggyback on one of the things that Rob says, trying to utilize some of those different areas. Maybe the auditorium is an area, again, a much bigger space where you could still do small groups, but in a much bigger area.
Yeah, I think also too, we're going to have, some of the labs that we won't be able to utilize, or the computer labs would be more available than they normally would, because with every child having their own computer in the classroom, there wouldn't be the need to send a group down to a computer lab.
And I just think too that it's important for the kids to get out of the classrooms. If they're not going to be moving around a lot, if they do take small groups out to another place, I think it'll make a big difference. The classroom will be smaller, and then they'll have kids getting their specialized instruction. I think that would help out all the way around for the kids and the teachers to make their job enjoyable, because I think it's going to be a challenge this year more than ever. And I just would like to make sure that everybody's working to make sure that it's the optimum for the kids. That's all. And I know that they will. I just get nervous about the union. That's all.
Listen, so they've been pretty good to work with. I think right now, in general, they've had some questions. We've done the best we could to address them. Again, I think it was Rob or Rich that one of them mentioned that we've seen all of our staffs. They've come in on a voluntary basis because they want to make sure not only they're safe, but more importantly, the kids are safe. The one advantage, Pat, I think to a hybrid model would be if we did it the way that I suggested, we would have 50% capacity and half the classrooms free. That would be a large advantage to that. So we would certainly have more space then. But again, as of today, that's not our charge, but that would be certainly a big help us out in at least establishing or be able to keep small group kind of work and those kinds of things. I think you're right on for that.
All right, thank you.
I would just like to take a moment I just want to say our administrators, teachers, maintenance crews, superintendent, coordinators, right down to our custodians have worked so very well and have been so involved in ensuring that our children can return to a safe environment where they can get the best education possible. And I know that I am deeply appreciative to each and every one of them for extending themselves from March when we suddenly had to shut down and redirect to distance learning. And here we are trying to recover and move forward, and we've been successful. It's not been easy, but we have been successful, and it's because of each and every one of you. And I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I'm sure that I'm saying that on behalf of this entire board.
Yes. Thank you, Rosa. We all said I've never seen, we work together pretty well anyway, but we're working really hard for the summertime. Yeah, it's not the normal shutdown, to say the least. And with that, that's the last day of the high school.
So do we have student reps?
They're here, but Dana, we got Dana to go too.
We got Dana still. I'm sorry, Dana.
No.
Go right ahead.
Okay. And I'm going to apologize in advance. I have total control right now of what's going on in school, but the child in my home, I have literally no control over. So I'm hoping she doesn't make an appearance, but I apologize if she does. All right. All right. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So what I first want to talk about at the high school level, obviously we have over 1,600 students. We have over 200 adults in our building. So you're talking about, nearly 2,000 people on any given day. And when you have a building of that size, there's not going to be one magic bullet mitigation factor that's going to ensure that everyone is safe. So what we have to really look at doing is kind of layering mitigation levels. So we're looking at different layers of things, physical mitigation, some differences possibly in schedules and routines and policies, and all of those things are going to kind of layer together to ensure that we have the most safe environment possible. So I've kind of separated these into those mitigation layers that we're going to be looking at. One of the things I'm going to talk about toward the end is possibly looking at a bit of a schedule shift, not so much for the students, but for the teachers. And we have 3 layers of that we're looking at. Kind of broken up into 3 different categories. One being, the kind of the least contacts per day, and then going, kind of lessening those reins from there. And I think we'd probably have to wait a little bit to make a decision on which to use based on what our health department data looks like when we get a little closer to the start of the year. As Neil mentioned, the governor is not going to give us a definite answer probably until mid-August. So maybe it would be around that time when we knew what our return plan was going to be for sure that we would make that decision. So I'm going to talk a little bit about those different options. First thing we're going to look at is what some of our physical mitigation measures are going to look like. Number one, as everyone has said, of course, masks, hand sanitizer readily available in the hallway. Use of some mobile plexiglass barriers. So in areas like social work, psychology, hearing impaired, where you may have to remove that mask, particularly if they're doing testing or assessment, looking at those rolling plexiglass barriers that can be moved between the assessor and the student so that the mask can be removed when 6 feet of space is not possible. Looking at maximum distance in the classroom. So, we're kind of used to looking at arranging our classrooms so that we have an optimal level of student engagement, whether it be pods in the classrooms or, desks stationed in such a way that the student engagement is with each other is optimal, and the classrooms are going to look very different this year. As Rob mentioned, it's going to be kind of bare bones on the furniture, desk pulled all the way back into the corners, which isn't how we're used to seeing a classroom set up. But keeping them at that distance, putting them in the corners, we can get probably 3.5 to 4 feet between desks, in some rooms more than others. So that way we can put that maximum physical distance. Looking at hand washing breaks, we're very lucky at the high school level where we can send kids a few at a time into a bathroom to wash hands. We're not at the elementary level where you have to, walk a kid to the bathroom. So looking at those frequent hand washing breaks, mask breaks if they're necessary. Looking at single direction hallways, we're doing kind of a marketing campaign on the walls and on the floors where possible to encourage students to walk one way down particular hallways where there might be high traffic areas. For example, when you walk to the lobby and you have the hallways that are parallel to the auditorium, normally 2-way hallways that are high traffic areas because you're coming into the main office, you're leaving the cafeteria. So what we're looking at is using that left side to go one way and the right side to go the other, so that you have single side hallways. Supply quarantine. This was something that really concerned my teachers. Was they always leave a bucket of pens or a bucket of pencils or whatever it may be. So we did order plenty of pens and pencils and those things that you use daily. Okay, hold on. We're using a supply quarantine method so that once a child uses a supply, they're put into a bucket for quarantine and left until they can, 3 days passes, so that we're sure that there's not going to be any traces of the virus. Okay, get it. So those are the physical mitigation measures. Routine changes. So we're actually kind of doing the opposite of what Kerrigan and Bailey are doing because of the times that our buses get dropped off. So our outdoor arrivals, we're actually not going to allow students into the building until 7:10 a.m. And that's because our teachers don't arrive until 7:25. So it really isn't possible to have kids go directly into the classrooms because there's not teachers there to monitor them. Because we're the first bus run, our buses start dropping off actually between 6:30 and 6:40. So what we don't want is the kids congregating inside, because all the data shows us that being outside is much better as far as the spread of the virus goes. You don't have the viral particles accumulating in the air outside like you could inside. So we're going to leave students outside until 7:10. And then we do have our breakfast club monitors that will allow them in at that time and monitor them inside and make sure they're adhering to social distancing and the masks. But we are going to leave them outside to that point. Breakfast will be available outdoors at kiosks. I've already talked to Meg, and she has some great ideas about what the menu choices will be and where those stations could be. And she's always so flexible as far as what we need to do to make things work. And, you know, it seems like with her ideas and the input that my staff has had, that's going to go really well. We're going to cohort when feasible. Cohorting completely at the high school really is not possible, but we will cohort when feasible. For example, you know, kids who are in like the freshman academy or even some of our 10th grade classes, there is some degree of cohorting possible, but not to the extent that it would be in the lower levels. We're looking at outdoor classes when that's possible, particularly for those teachers who are in the B wing, which we're now calling the Z wing because we have a new B wing. That's kind of the last old area that we're using. So we're trying to temporarily locate some of those teachers so that they're in an area with air conditioning. It's going to be really hot over there with the masks. But we've talked about using multiple outdoor areas so that they can remove the mask and teach outside when possible. We're going to use common areas. We have that huge space in the lobby where we could set up kind of multiple little cohorts if we had to displace those Z-wing teachers until the weather cools down a little bit. We're looking at a staggered dismissal, probably just a couple of minutes in between each group, but just so you don't have 1,600 kids all pouring out into one direction. Since our bus lineup and our student vehicles and our parent drop-off is all in one place, we would stagger it by a few minutes just to give kids a little more space between them while they're going out to the buses. We're going to be doing lockers by request only, like Rich and Rob discussed. You know, giving every student a locker is probably not something we want to do this year. However, there are some students who have, you know, some special circumstances or some special needs, or just, you know, maybe some of our students who are in different types of programs like nursing just have more materials than the average student, and we would give them a locker by request. I'll be honest, at the high school level, lockers are not something that's utilized on a daily basis anymore. The kids, you know, we don't have 6 and 7 textbooks like they did when we were in high school, because so many of the materials are virtual and online, and they're just not dragging around 7 textbooks. So I don't foresee that being an issue at all. After school activities via Zoom when feasible, for example, you know, your class council meetings and your DECA meetings and all of those things, there's really no reason that those can't be via Zoom. And I actually think we may get a higher level of attendance for a while with them being via Zoom, because students don't have to worry about transportation. So you do have some students who you know, kind of decline to participate in those types of activities because transportation is an issue, and that removes that barrier for them. So it'll be interesting to see what it does to the number of those activities. Some technology changes. The biggest thing probably, and this would be big news, pandemic or no pandemic, but we're really going one-to-one at the high school with all these laptops. So teachers are going to be able to do completely different things in the classroom. I think if any benefit came out of teaching during the pandemic is that our teachers really got very good with Google Classroom. And some of the features that they really liked were, you know, the ability to in real time share feedback with students, have students submit things, making comments, making edits, doing that in a Google Hangout or in a group project. So I think our teachers are going to be making maximum use of this technology inside the classroom. And even students using this technology as a way to distance even when doing group work. For the classrooms with built-in keyboards, we've looked at getting keyboard skins, and those would be like in our Mac labs for the areas that need Macs, like graphic design. So the kids actually have their own keyboard skin, so it goes over the keyboard. They remove it when they're done with the class, and they put it into a sleeve that goes in the back of the classroom with their name on it. So they're not sharing that bacteria with anyone else. They can be disinfected very easily because they're just plastic. We've also ordered Impero. And what this is it's a technology that allows teachers who are teaching that kind of a class that is computer-based. For example, all of our STEM classes, our graphic design class, all of our business and marketing classes, those classes that you might lean over a kid and take control of their mouse and try, you know, kind of manipulate the keyboard or the screen to show them what to do. We've purchased Impero, and what that allows you to do is it's kind of something along those lines where you're able to take over the student's screen from your own computer. So you just kind of put in their monitor number, you're able to jump into their screen, and you could manipulate their screen and show them what to do without hovering over them or taking control of their mouse. So there's some of the technology factors we'll be using. Lunch is going to look a little different. We're going to be doing online ordering in the morning. And the reason for that is really just to give Meg kind of a count between the limited selections. This is going to minimize a lot of crowding because the crowding usually occurs in the deli line or the salad line where they're able to order individual toppings, which unfortunately this year we will not be able to do. We won't need the lunch number entry. The state has waived that, and they'll just have to do kind of a tally mark. So that helps us in two ways. There won't be the crowding to get the lunches, and that you won't have to worry about the touch point of the keypad. Because we had talked about how we're going to do that to sanitize the keypad in between touches. And then Meg communicated with the state and found out that that's not going to be necessary. We're going to be looking at kind of a grab and go model where students will either be able to take their lunch home or utilize outdoor seating. So we have two really nice areas where we'll be able to do picnic tables. One would be in the overhang outside of the lobby, and the other would be outside of the cafeteria. And Neil and I spoke about that area, which is really a nice area, and we would like to be able to use that even after the pandemic. Maybe make it a senior privilege to be able to eat lunch out there. Rich will remember back in the early 2000s, seniors were able to eat lunch outside, and I think that was something that they really enjoyed. So we would like to carry that forward even after this has passed. Medical office, as the other administrators had mentioned, will be getting either an LPN or a CNA or somebody with that kind of experience to assist in that medical office. We also will be in our first year of the school-based health center. So I think we're going to be in even better shape than most, because we'll have an APRN or a PA in office. One of the questions I've been asked is, will that person be able to administer COVID tests, such as a rapid COVID test? I don't know the answer to that yet. I'm working with Melissa Mandry, who's the overseer of the clinic, to get a final answer on that. That would really be kind of a game changer at the high school level if you have a student who is symptomatic, to be able to know in 15 minutes whether or not they have the virus or if it's just a cold or allergies. So if we're able to do that, that's going to really avoid those 14-day quarantines and things like that. So I'll have an answer on that soon. We're adding physical barriers to the nurse's office, some plexiglass shields. We talked about an isolation room. We are very lucky because we have an amazing new medical suite where we have kind of every bell and whistle you could ask for. So that isolation room is not going to be an issue for us because we have such a nice new space with all of those areas. Special area teachers, this is probably the biggest challenge, is being able to accommodate all the special area teachers. So I did have individual meetings with most of the teachers, anyone who felt comfortable. The rest shared feedback via email. So some of the things we'll be doing, we're going to temporarily remove the stage from the black box theater. That's a modular stage, so that can come in and out without a problem. That'll allow that classroom to be used at full capacity and get that social distance. We're going to remove the adjacent chairs on the choral riser so that we can utilize the entire space of the choral room. Band is going to be outside at the recommendation that music instruments is 12 feet. So they're going to have opposite directional seating, meaning they'll be seating 12 feet apart and in the opposite direction, so that any spill or anything is not going on another student. We're going to be doing that in 5 groups of 30 rather than 1 group of 150. Which I think is going to be really nice anyway, to be able to kind of focus on instrumentation and section and not just on the whole group. PE will be outdoors whenever possible. Obviously, if there's inclement weather, we'll move into the gymnasium. And again, we have 2 brand new gymnasiums to work with. So, we're in really good shape there. As far as art supplies, we talked about, I don't know if you've ever been to one of those nail salons where you have like your little packet of your own supplies that they keep for you there. And that's how art is going to function. They're each going to have a little pouch with the supplies they need in a little, in a box that's a pouch with their name on it, so that we're not reusing art supplies. The materials that she talked about were really not expensive materials for any of these classes. We are going to look at getting plexi barriers in art. Chris was looking into making sure that he could find them in the height that would be appropriate, not only for high school size students, but for the stools we have in the art rooms. The art tables are very, very heavy. They're not, it feels like they're almost built in. They're not, but they're so heavy, it would be really cumbersome to try to change the configuration of the art room. So we're looking at getting barriers there. If we can't get barriers for the art room, then we'll probably look at utilizing a different space for them for now, whether it would be the library or one of the computer labs. As I already talked about in the technology section, we'll be using Imperial for business, graphics, and STEM to be able to keep our distance there. Additional barriers in CTE, meaning that when students are working on cars and things like that, they'll be using a face shield in addition to the mask to kind of increase our level of protection. Our world language teachers will be wearing the clear masks so that the kids can see their lips and how they're formulating words, but still able to keep the mask so that they're complying. Attendance policy will be tracking attendance and looking at fever-related illnesses to make sure that we don't have any unreported cases. We're one big change, and Rosa, you know that we're sticklers usually for attendance points, and Pat, who sat on the committee as well. But this year, if we have a parent documented absent, so if a parent is saying that my child is exhibiting symptoms of COVID-19, whether it be a cough, a fever, and really, if you look at the new CDC list, it could be pretty much anything. They will not get any points for that documentation. It does have to be a document in writing, though, whether it's a note or an email. And I think that'll stop the feeling, and particularly among our higher achieving kids, of, yes, I'm sick, but I have to go to school because of my points, because that's something we obviously don't want right now. Our academic achievement awards, we will be removing the perfect attendance award for now, and we'll focus on another area, probably something to do with character or kindness or something like that, that's going to replace that perfect attendance award. So those are kind of our mitigation layers there. One of the biggest challenges at the high school level is limiting or minimizing contacts with kids. And if you look at all the research that's coming out now, is as far as who is passing on this virus, what they're saying is teenagers and pre-adolescents are passing this, can pass it on at the same rates as adults. So at the high school level, we have to be particularly cognizant of the number of contacts our teachers are having in a day. So what we're trying to do in order to reduce those contacts is to reduce traffic and movement by about half, which would mean limiting the transitions to 3 per day, so 3 blocks per day. Right now we have a rotating 7-day schedule, so it's 7 periods, 5 periods meet every day. So basically you're 5 days on, 2 days off with every class. What we would like to do is try to, and those classes are 1 hour long. What we would like to try to do is minimize that to about 3 blocks. And those would be between 85 and 95 minutes. We had planned on the first block being longer to accommodate things like morning announcements, the pledge, the lunch orders, things like that. And then kind of doing a staggered dismissal. One of the issues that we came across when we talked about doing it that way with those minimal amount of blocks is the contractual language at the high school level in our district is very specific to free time, and every teacher does need to have a prep period every day and a lunch every day. In some districts, it is over a period of time they can have this, but not in our district. It is every day. So when you're dropping blocks, you're dropping free periods. So we looked at the possibility of every student having their lunch and every teacher having their lunch and their prep at the end of the day, meaning the students would leave at about 12:20. The teachers would then have their lunch and then their prep. Lunch first and then prep, so that the teachers can't leave. The teachers would work until 1:45. So that's kind of the first iteration we looked at. What I liked about that is it minimizes the transitions, it minimizes movement in the school by about 50%, and it minimizes the number of students that teachers come in contact. Over any cycle, it's normally about, could be up to 150. It would be maximum 90 here, but usually only 60, because one block would be every 2 days at least would be their collaborative time. So that's one of the options we looked at. We then looked at an option where we added in additional block time, but had them have just their lunch at the end of the day. So keeping the students till about 1:15, having the students have their lunch and the teacher have their lunch at the end of the day to keep the students a little later. We would need to do, however, all 5 transitions in order to make that work, because as I said, you do need to make sure that you have the free period for each teacher every day. So there would have to be all 5 transitions to make that work, which is fine. We're still taking away that lunch factor. We looked at a number of different options as far as having traditional lunch waves. And I met with Ken and we talked about a lot of different spaces. And the good news is we do have the space to spread kids out. The more difficult part becomes monitoring them. You can't put 100 kids in one area and with one adult. That's just not safe. So to break them up into 5 or 6 areas, do we have the space? Could we make that work? Yes, but do we have the adult coverage to make that work? Probably not. So that's what we talked about allowing students to get their lunch at the end of the day and eating outside if they chose to. And I think it probably would be a mixed bag. I think some students want to eat with their friends. Some would rather just grab their stuff and go. Many students drive, so they would probably want to just, you know, maybe either take their lunch or take their lunch and head home. So we kind of look at them in 3 tiers. This would be the first iteration where it's just 3 blocks. The second one will be 5 blocks with the students going to grab and go at 1:15. And then the third would be the least restrictive, which would be running the traditional block schedule that we have last year. Again, that the difficulty with that is the monitoring of the lunch and the number of student contacts per day. That brings you up to, you know, it could be up to 4, so at least 120 contacts a day. So we are looking at 3 different options and, you know, kind of based on where health data is and what our requirements are by the time we get there.
Dana, I have a question for you. In the event you went with the 3-block schedule, what would we do to ensure that our teachers were at school and available to our students if they needed, you know, a question answered or an email or?
Well, Rosa, the reality is during any teacher's prep period, whether it's at 9 o'clock in the morning or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, they really don't need to see students if they don't choose to. I mean, I'm proud to say, I would say 99% of my teachers make themselves completely available at all times, regardless of whether they're supposed to be or not. So to ensure that they're there to answer questions, I think it's hard to say, because regardless of when their prep period is, they're not contractually obligated to have contact with kids. That's just how their contract works.
Well, they
but
are required to have office hours a couple of times a week, so we can speak to that.
Yes,
Also, what the contract does say is that if they have a prep period, last period, they're still supposed to come back, because there's like a 5-minute time at the end of the day where they can't just leave and not come back.
So our agreement has been that they can leave for lunch, but they can't leave during their prep, and their lunch would be first. So they would have to be there during their prep. Now, whether they choose to have student contact or not, as I said, I have no concerns that 99% of my staff would do that. But I can't say I would guarantee it because it's not, you know, that's not what's contractual. But I can't foresee that being any kind of major issue.
And let me be the elephant in the, but, you know, talk about the elephant in the room here. Frankly, Dana needs to prepare for West Haven High School. You know, our concern is not what the other teachers at the other buildings are thinking, although we will take that into consideration because we do have to work with the union. But the high school is a different animal. They are not teaching any less. They are still working the same amount of contractual time as the other buildings. Again, it's a battle that we're willing to fight. However, we'll discuss it with the other schools. But, you know, frankly, I think she made the best point that Dana made, is that, you know, lunch is going to be a challenge, because it's not even a matter of spreading the kids out. It's a matter of spreading the kids out and making sure we have the proper supervision in order to do so, which is why we considered very seriously having the kids eat, you know, do a grab and go more style lunch at the end of the day. So there's some logistical challenges at the high school that just, again, don't exist at the other buildings. And I'm getting concerned because as soon as somebody heard, or a few people heard about the high school schedule, well, we need to have a half day too, and our kids need to at the end of the day. No, you don't, because you've heard that all of the other schools can safely cohort. It's a challenge at West Haven High School. We will continue to look at other options, but it is a concern to keep people in cohorts or limiting contact with a lot of people in case we have to contact trace or anything like that.
Well, thank you, Neil, for that. That was very informative, and I appreciate it.
And I feel like I was speaking so quickly because I know that it's 8 o'clock and people, you know, are a little burnt. So I apologize if I was speaking fast. And if anyone has any questions, I'll certainly follow up.
Danny, you've done, you listen, we know we still got some work ahead of us at the high school, but you know, again, you have challenges there that just don't exist at the other buildings. And I know, again, we've spent a lot of time talking, and I spent a lot of time in your office going over some of the scenarios.
Does anybody have any questions for Dana? Anybody?
I see two, Rosie and Pat.
Okay, Rosie, let's go with you first. Rose,
Unmute,
Unmuted.
unmute. Unmute.
Rose. Okay, let's start with Pat.
Oh,
Mine is-
Rose has a technical difficulty.
Mine is not necessarily for you, Dana. It's for the it's actually more for Neil, but we discussed this before and I was just wondering, are we going to hire any more social workers or guidance counselors or anybody to help with these kids with the transition? Is there money in the CARES package? I don't know if that's covered. We don't know what these kids have been going through when they're going home. We don't know what they're going home to. It's a whole new circumstance, and I didn't know if we were able to fit in any more social workers or counselors to help the kids with the transition and everything that's going on. It's difficult for adults, so I can't imagine some of these kids. It must be difficult for them too.
Pat, I will tell you that Rob and I have been involved in a very lengthy meetings with Bridges. We're getting a pretty sizable grant through Bridges to cover additional social workers, not specifically related to trauma from COVID, but they will not be our social workers, but Bridges workers that will be pushing in. We will also have an additional social worker through the school-based health center. So I know at least for Rob and I, we will be getting additional supports, not necessarily through the CARES funding, but through outside agencies, which we're really looking forward to. We've been working really closely with Marty over at Bridges and are looking forward to that partnership.
Great, thank you. Anything on our budget, Neil, or no?
You know, Pat, we actually had a discussion today at our cabinet meeting with Joe, and next time I will have Joe here to give an update. You know, we're really fortunate. Most districts do not have the number of social workers we already have on staff. So, like, for example, we've got 3 at Carrigan. We've got at least 2 at West Haven High School. We've got 2 at Bailey, in addition to the psychologist. So every elementary school has at least 1. We're pretty fortunate with the number we have. I know that Jim Tercio has been working with the social workers. They're going to eliminate second step for now so that counselors are available to get into the classroom, as an example, and do those kinds of things. I feel like we're going to be okay. Listen, if we find the need, we can certainly, address it at the time. But like Dana said, with the outside resources coming in, with the number of social workers we already have on staff, I think we'll be all right.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for doing that, Dana and Rob, too.
Rosie, are you with us?
There you go. Oh, there you go.
Sorry. Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm having trouble. It's not my computer. I only have a quick question, Dana. You said the kids would do grab and go lunch, and if they choose, they can eat outside. If all the staff is on their lunch or prep time or whatever, will there be any supervision for these kids?
So that's a good question. We will have, it's kind of 2 or 3-fold, I guess. So we do have a breakfast club that comes in the morning, and we had planned on splitting breakfast club for now between kind of breakfast club and lunch club so that we do have additional supervision. Teachers also will have a 20-minute duty between 12:20 and 12:40 to assist with lunches. So that would at least get the bulk of the students out. I don't think all of the students will be finished with their lunches by 12:40, but I think the bulk will have gone through and kind of gone off to various locations. After 12:40, anyone who's being paid for a 6th class is actually, we still have to compensate them because they have to teach those 6 classes, but they're not entitled to a prep period. So we'll be utilizing those people to oversee the remainder of the students for lunch because I don't have to give them the prep. And I like to get what I pay for, and I'm paying for it, so I want to use them somewhere.
Thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions? No other questions, so we can move on, Neil?
Yeah, Ann just texted me. She got knocked off for, I don't know where she is. She may be in Rhode Island by the beach, so
Good for her.
got knocked off. So I apologize for that.
That's okay. So we don't have any student reps present, correct?
Yeah, Mackenzie and Anthony are both here. They are.
All right, so let's start with Mackenzie.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, I can.
Okay, So we don't really have lots to report because it is summer, but I just like to start off by saying that a lot of people have asked me about what's happening this year, and I haven't really been able to give them a clear answer. I was wondering if there's anything that I could tell people who ask if we're going to end up starting up this year or not.
Mackenzie, I think the short answer right now is, as of today, the plan is to return to school on a full school year. It's going to be 180 days. We may adjust the calendar. So the good news is they're going to get, if it happens like it's supposed to, you're going to get an extra week's vacation, which I'm sure you'll enjoy. However, a final decision is going to be made by the governor sometime around mid-August if he's going to stick to the plan, and that would be based on where the virus is, if there's a spike or whatnot. If not, we'll return to school. If there is, it may be more of a hybrid model where you do some distance learning and some at school learning.
All right, that's all from me. I know Anthony has more, but thank you.
Okay, Anthony, it's your turn.
Okay, so just a brief update regarding sports at West Haven High. Mackenzie and I have both started summer conditioning for soccer. Our coaches are like really stressing about being safe with COVID, and we have a lot of like practices and methods we are using to do that. We are working out in groups of like 8, like smaller groups. We're spreading out during the workouts, and when we're not working out, we're all wearing masks. And our bags are all like spread out on the bleachers, like no one's really next to each other. We're all staying 6 feet apart. And then my last thing I want to add is, I know us seniors were moving into the college process, and I just want to like shout out the guidance counselors for being like very like responsive to emails. Like I know I've had a lot of like meetings over the summer with my counselor over Zoom regarding colleges and stuff like that. And yeah, everything's going good with that. But yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
Great to hear, Anthony.
Thank you. Thank you to the guidance counselors. Okay, so moving on to the board members. Starting with Patrick, do you have anything to report?
No, really. I'm all set.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. How about you, Bobby?
Nope, all set. Thank you.
Thank you. Ann? Pat?
I just want to say thank you to everyone for all their help. I'm sure it's been a very stressful summer trying to figure out how to do everything. And shout out to Chris Everon and the guys that are working to move all the equipment and get the buildings ready. And I think we're going to be in good shape. And I look forward to going back to school. And I'll just say that my grandchildren both went back to daycare. My daughter was not a happy woman, but she had no choice. If she wanted to get paid, they had to go back. And it's been a good transition. The kids are happy. There's differences. They can't go into the rooms to get them. They can't drop them off. Someone comes out, you call, but it's working and the kids are happy and she's happy. And she was very, very nervous about it. So I'm hoping that we are as successful, if not more successful, when we start school in September. But thank you to everyone for all your help and work. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Pat. Jim?
Okay, thank you. Got a few notes here, but first of all, let me start by saying I want to thank Neil and the administration here tonight for their nice presentation. It seems to me you've done a great job, up to right now, getting our school ready for the upcoming season here. Just a few things. I know it's not easy. I mean, I'm hearing from, both sides, with the parents, some obviously want their children to go to school and others, are very, have a lot of questions, about sending their kids to school. And I know it's just not an easy answer. So as Neil said earlier, we have no idea even right now whether we're going to go back as we are right now. As far as the governor is concerned, that could change sometime in August if possible. So, but I just want to say thank you. You did a great job there tonight. a couple things. I haven't heard anything about the buses as far as what do they plan on doing? Winkle bus as far as like sanitation and things of that nature. Neil, can you maybe?
Yeah, Jim, they have purchased those foggers and desanitizing machines, so they'll do them daily. I know there's been some people though who want them done in between runs. I'm not sure that can happen in between like the high school, the Bailey and the Carrigan run and the elementary run in the morning. Although before they start their afternoon run, they are planning on doing it. It just logistically isn't possible, but they do plan on doing them daily and then in between the runs.
Okay, thank you. Also, myself and Rose Russo, we went to both the Bailey graduation and the high school graduation. I want to give a shout out to Rob and his staff over there, and Dana and her staff. You did a wonderful job. It was very, very orderly. I think the kids had they enjoyed it themselves. I'm saying, obviously, under these times, but there were a lot of smiling faces over there. You had a ton of staff, the teachers and support staff who were there for the kids, and I think it went very, very well. So great job by the both of you, you two people there. Also, I talked to Neil a couple of weeks ago, and I was one of the board members who asked about having an in-person meeting, and Neil did get back to me, and he did tell me that we were going to have an in-person meeting, which I was very happy with, and I saw our agenda just passed last week, whatever that it was going to be, it was via Zoom, and I was quite disappointed to say the least. I think we have a lot of issues to talk with, and I think in person would be much better. So I'm hoping that our next meeting, we're asking thousands of students and staff to come to school sometime in early September, and the least we can do is hold an in-person meeting, amongst ourselves. So that's just a for thought down the road. Also, Neil, it's just we haven't really had school since middle of March, and just a thought, possibly maybe the first week of school is maybe easing it in, possibly a half-day schedule. I'm saying it's just a thought. So much going on. To try to ease this thing and see how it lands in the first week of school. That's just a thought.
No, Jim, I think that's a point well taken. Again, we're reducing the calendar by 3 days, although we may use it for like an orientation type, a half day kind of thing. But I am meeting, as I mentioned earlier, tomorrow with several of our administrators to plan out that first week of school. And, I know we might be able to take that into consideration. I know Dana had talked about bringing in a class a day or something like that, so we can kind of ease into it. So we're looking at some options like that.
Okay, thanks. And also, I just want to welcome our new member here, Lena, our PR person. Congratulations on your new job here. I'm sure you do a great job, and especially now with people having so many questions that they need to be answered. And I seen your resume; it's quite a resume, and I wish you nothing but the best in your position there too. Just one other question there too, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot. It says the salaries negotiated. Do you have this is for Neil? Any
Jim, the reason it's exactly what we had budgeted for at the 50,000. The reason we put to be determined is because we may look to trade off and put that job in the CWA union and try to get the vacant human resource position out. So that's the only reason why it's to be determined, but it's exactly the range that we talked about.
Okay, that's great. That's all I have for this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay.
Rosie. Rosie, are you with us?
Question down. So
There you are.
I am. So thank you all for answering all my questions. Congratulations to Bailey and West Haven High School graduates. And Lena, welcome aboard. I hope you're very happy here. I think you will be.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Andrea?
Hi, it's Andrea. I don't have anything to report, but I just want to say that it's unbelievable watching all the administrators, all their time, their dedication that they put since March, and I just think you guys really.
Unfortunately, Andrea, it appears that you're having some technical difficulty.
We got the message. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you, Andrea.
We heard the thank you.
Yeah.
Again, I just want to reiterate that I'm so pleased with all of the work that you guys have put into this summer project. And I too am looking forward to seeing where we're going to be several weeks from now. And I know that we'll be more than prepared. I have the utmost of confidence in each and every one of you. Okay, so with that said, we can move forward to D1, approval of minutes. If I may have a motion for the approval of minutes.
Motion.
Patrick, motion. Rosie, second.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Minutes have passed. We're moving on to D2, the resignations. It seems to be a pretty common occurrence in this day and age, and I would like to take an opportunity to wish each of them well. May I have a motion?
Rosa, it's Bob Guthrie. I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Bob. Second,
Second.
Pat Libro. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. New hires, before we move into 20-35 to 40.
20.
56 inclusive. Number 20-48 has since rescinded. That is the RN, school nurse at Kerrigan, Jennifer Juntwaite. So we're going to approve 35 to 56 without 48. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Jim. A second?
Second it.
Pat Libro? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. D4, new business, we have none. The rest is informational. If I can have a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Thank you, Jim. Motion, meeting adjourned at 8:30 p.m.
Thank you.
Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.